played when they got back from the break and the way they played Tuesday and the way they played Thursday, the Predators decided, Andrew Burnett and Barry Trotz decided, you know what? Forget about it. Our team's too busy worried about the vacation. Our team is too worried hanging out in Vegas. Our team is too. We're not doing this. We're going home. We're going to get our minds right. We're going to focus on hockey. And let me just say, that in and of itself makes me feel so good about where the Predators are headed. Because when I think about when the Predators were at their peak, the 2017 season, the 2018 season, there is an interview Chris Mason did on one of the other shows on our station that I can still hear in my head about that 2017 run when he talked about how the team was all pulling the rope in the same direction. And I think back to that 2017 run, or even the 2018 season, where the team got together after the 17 run and they said, all right, we think that we play better at home. We want home ice advantage in the playoffs, so we're going to pull the rope in the same direction for the entire year, and they did play that way in 2018. Now, it didn't matter, but their goal was to get home ice. Their goal the entire season was every game mattered because they wanted to win that President's Trophy, and they wanted to have home ice. And that was everybody pulling the rope in the same direction for the 17 playoffs and the 18 season. And then I think about what Barry Trotz is about. Accountability, dedication, selflessness. And it reminds me of the 17 team. And a lot of these players grew up under Barry Trotz from the 17 team, right? Pecorine, Roman Yossi, Ryan Ellis, Craig Smith, Mike Fisher was a part of, kind of the Barry Trotz way of doing things. That's how Barry Trotz operates. He'll give you the best. He'll take care of you. He'll support you. I mean, he comes on this show every week, and we ask him when things aren't going well. We say, why aren't they going well? I voice my own frustrations about the team when it comes to Barry Trotz. I mean, we are constantly, in communication with him on the show, and he's really in communication with you because he'll give you the best. But he expects your best effort in return. And as a fan, let me say this. I absolutely love the idea of the coach and the general manager punishing the hockey team for those heinous performances last week, specifically the Thursday night game. Because I went to that Thursday night game. And I paid to go to that Thursday night game. And I sat there in my seats on that Thursday night game. And I had my head in my hands on that Thursday night game. And a guy sitting in the row in front of me after the first period as we were walking up the aisle said, Stillman, give them hell tomorrow. And I'm like, I hear you. I hear you. And so as a fan, how many times do we, hear, oh, well, these guys, it's a business, and these guys say they care, but, do they? It's a job. It's Because the coach and the general manager looked at a young team, and they put their foot down and said, look, there are going to be consequences for our actions. Our expectation for what this team is going to be, not today, but what this team is going to be long term, they're up here. And right now, the only way to get there is for you to meet those expectations on a daily basis, and you didn't do it this week. And as a fan, I loved it. As an analyst, I loved it. Because this team has to be accountable. And this is the hard way of learning those lessons. Well, we thought we were going this and we're... No. You thought you were going to Vegas. You were excited about going to Vegas. You guys got money in your pocket because you're pro athletes. You guys probably get the best looking women because you play hockey. And I don't know if you guys know this, but hockey players, it's out of this world. You guys probably get this. You guys get that. Everything's taken care of. You guys are going to U2. You guys are spending 2 extra days in Vegas at the nicest hotels. And you guys are not with Barry Trotz. Not the way you played on Thursday. So this Andrew Burnett and Barry Trotz thing, this might not work. They may not be the two guys that take the Predators to the promised land. I have no idea. When it comes to Barry Trotz, I always tell people, I love Barry Trotz. I love the energy that Barry Trotz brings. I love the honesty with which Barry Trotz operates. I love the fact that, again, he will always put the team first, and I don't have to question that because he did that as the coach. But I have no idea if Barry Trotz can look at a 16-year-old in Saskatchewan and say, you know what, with the 13th pick, this is the guy that we've got to take who's going to be the future of the Predators, who's going to develop into that big boy forward, or if it's the guy out of Switzerland who they, the international scout I have no idea if he'll be able to do that, which is one of many elements of the job, but the true crux of it. But I know this. They're going to do things the Barry Trotz way, and that's all I can ask of them, which is that when you show up to work, you're there to work. When you get in front of the fans and you play a game like you did on Thursday, there should be ramifications for that. I have a friend who, hires coaches who told me, boy, I tell you right now, I wish I could give out contracts to coaches, and I wish in the contracts that I gave out to the coaches, I could write in there, hey, if you lose X amount of games, we're not paying you as much. And I said, well, that's kind of what incentives are, but I hear what you're saying. By the way, Matt Duchene went to Tootsie's the other night. There was a whole video of it. Ian, did you see Duchene over at Tootsie's?
Yes, I did see that.
Oh, boy, he loved getting up there on that stage. He played his tunes. And you know what? I'll give him credit because he walked the walk on Thursday night, so you can go ahead and talk the talk. The problem, though, with Matt Duchene and what Matt Duchene was all about when he was on the Predators was that he was hitting cleanup for a team, and he didn't always walk that walk. And it's a lot easier for a guy like Matt Duchene to bat 7th or 8th on the Dallas Stars with all those good players and then go do whatever you want. But based off of what I know, I think there's a pretty good chance Matt Duchene would have been up on that stage even if they had lost. Because that seems to be more of his priorities than, again, hockey. And in the past around here, maybe that would have been okay. But not with this administration. So I had a great weekend again, being with the team, the big victory on Saturday. I mean, that was a really exciting win. They were gutsy. Freaking Luke Shen scored on Saturday. But I left that airport on Saturday night knowing that the Predators are in a great place because they are accountable and they are going to do things the right way. Because with everything in life, whether it's hockey, football, basketball, baseball, a venture capital firm, a lawnmower service, whatever it may be, it always starts at the top. And at the top, this group decided Tuesday against Jersey and Thursday against Dallas was not acceptable. And I don't know how, as a fan, you can't look at your coach and your GM and say, man, these guys know how to run this team. And that was the most exciting part about it. And I told Chris Mason during the game on Saturday, we were talking about going back home instead of the team going to Vegas. And this was before Elliot Friedman had reported it. And I said, I think the fans are going to love this. I said it because, again, I'm a ticket holder. I paid to be at the game Thursday. A lot of you paid to be at the game Thursday. Even if you didn't pay to go to the game Thursday, but you watched the game on Thursday or you listened to the game on Thursday, you invested your time in this team, and what they gave you was not good enough. And I said, I think the fans are going to love this. But I don't know. That's up to you. 615-737-1025 is the phone number, 615-737-1025. And there was some pushback. There were some people that were a little upset about what Barry Trotz and Andrew Burnett did by sending the team home instead of going to Vegas. We'll get to that coming up next. Stillman and Company on a Monday. Speaking of the Predators, tomorrow is your chance to participate in Preds Pick to Click. If you correctly guess a Preds player that scores a goal in the Preds game tomorrow night, you win a pair of tickets to an upcoming Preds home game. Participate with Robbie and Rexro tomorrow morning at 8:45 a.m. Preds Pick to Click is brought to you by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty. List your home with TJ to get your home seen, heard, and sold.
So, Elliot, Nashville, Andrew Brunette pulls the plug on a trip that was planned to the Sphere to see U2. Why don't you explain what happened?
So Nashville comes out of the break. Brunette says they have a really bad practice on Monday. They lose at home on Tuesday to New Jersey, and then they were embarrassed at home by Dallas 9-2 on Thursday night. And Brunette makes a comment that people's minds are on vacations. So I wondered what that meant. And I heard what happened was they played in St. Louis today. They won, but their next game was Tuesday in Vegas. And basically what had been asked was, could the team go directly from St. Louis to Vegas instead of going to Nashville? U2 finishes at the Sphere on March the 2nd. So it was put together as a team event. The players were going to take the staff, and they were all going to go together and see U2 at the Sphere after, like, sometime in the next couple of days. But because of the way they played, the Predators canceled the trip and said, no, we're going home and we're going to practice. Now, I spoke to Barry Trotz today, and I asked him just about the decision, and he said, look, I'm not questioning our team's culture. I think we have a good culture. But when you're rebuilding or retooling, whatever phrase you want to use, you have to establish a standard that's expected in your organization, especially around their young players. He said the scores are relevant, but it's the way you prepare and play. And you can't allow the kind of performances we've had this week, especially at home. You cannot allow your players, particularly young players, to perceive them as acceptable. So we wanted to keep to our standards of principles and professionalism. That's why they canceled the trip.
That was Elliott on Hockey Night in Canada, laying it out there. Hey, the team was supposed to go from St. Louis to Vegas. Instead, they went from St. Louis home. Why? Because they played like crap on Tuesday and Thursday. That's why. Because Barry Trotz, again, as Elliott just said right there, says, hey, we've got a standard. And if you're not going to meet the standard, then we're not going to reward you with extra stuff. And I got to imagine that's not free, by the way, for the Predators to have a plan to be in Vegas for 4 days and instead it only be one night. I can promise you that that's not free and that's not cheap. But again, Barry has to think about the team. Now, apparently this was a big thing, right, in Hockey Night in Canada. I don't know how you guys feel about this. About the Predators looking at their players and kind of, again, punishing them. They got grounded for that performance on Thursday against Dallas. Go to your room. You're not going to Vegas. You're not going to U2. And you're not going to get to go enjoy Las Vegas out there in the nice weather and everything else as rich 24-year-olds are, again, it's a mixture of whatever. You're not doing it. Because you guys need to go to your room. You need to think about what you did. You need to think about hockey. I love it. I mean, I love it. When I heard this, I was like, oh, my God, I love this. I have no idea how you guys feel about it. Ian, do you have an opinion one way or another about any of this?
I mean, no, not really, to be honest with you. Like, I don't have a problem with it.
But you don't love it either, do you?
No, I mean, I don't, not necessarily, but I don't hate it. If they think this is the thing that they needed to do, I'm cool with it.
Okay, so you seem kind of indifferent or, thumbs up. I love it. I love it. But apparently Hockey Night in Canada didn't. And so this is Kelly Rudy and Jennifer Botterill, and I don't know anything about them. I'm sure they played hockey in their lives, and they were wonderful at it. I don't know anything about them, but they're on the panel. And again, Hockey Night in Canada is kind of the big NHL thing in Canada. And here's why they didn't like what the Predators ended up doing.
This is hard for me to disagree with their decision because I like both Barry Trotz and Brunette. They're really great people, but I think they're making a terrible decision here. Once you promise something, you can't renege on something this important. And as Elliott mentioned, not only the players, but a lot of the staff. So it's like a punishment for the staff, and I just don't think it's right. Just don't promise anything then, because you know why it's so personal to me? I had a coach that did the same thing. So in my latter parts of the year, he'd go, okay, Sunday off. Then we lose Saturday, and he takes the day off. And, that's just the principle of that is wrong. You can't take something away that you promised. Don't promise it then.
No, I agree, because I feel like there was a commitment made to the team to look forward to this. And yes, you want your team to play better, but I also feel like it's moments like these that can be huge team-building moments, so that when times are tough down the road, whether it's weeks or months from now or seasons down the road, you can build on these really important team moments where everybody was looking forward to it.
Okay, I hear you. I get it. But I think that this team needed the kick in the ass more than they needed the, well, you know what, let's all go to Vegas and let's go to the U2 concert and let's sing Kumbaya. And I think with Barry Trotz, there's going to be plenty of moments where they team build and they sing Kumbaya and all that, but I don't think they need to do that. Now, Vingan tells me that Jennifer Botterill is one of the most accomplished players in women's hockey history, which, awesome. Now, Kevin Bieksa was also on the panel, and I do know who he is because I went to a game a handful of years ago where Mike Fisher punched his tooth out. And so Kevin Bieksa was on the panel, and he echoes the sentiment that I have, which is, cry me a freaking river, go play better.
Respect both your opinions a lot. Jacob Silverberg, who's playing in this game tonight, I think he's like -2. He had this line when I came to Anaheim. I went like this with, wah. He always said, wah. Yep. So I understand the schedule is made at home. You had a day off every week at home, right? You can never, in my opinion, to your point, you cannot change that schedule because guys plan their kids' times and their wives' times around that. When you're on the road, you're on a business trip. You're not there for fun. You're not there for a round of golf. You're not there for a concert. If the coach allows you to have that, it's a luxury. It's a bonus. If you lose 9-2 and you're in a playoff race and you have back-to-back brutal games, that can be taken away from you. Your job is to play hockey. It's a $6 billion revenue business. The home time of the family, don't touch that. Don't renege on that, as you say. But the stuff on the road, it's a bonus, and it can be taken away if you don't give the proper effort.
I think it's perfectly said because I agree with the idea that, hey, if you tell the players, hey, we're off on Thursday, and then you take it back, I mean, they, again, could be making plans, we're going to go to the dentist with the kid that day, and then we got the student-teacher conference that normally for the other parents was on Tuesday, but because we were traveling, with the team, we weren't able to, so that, fine. But again, the idea of we're going to go and spend all this extra money for you guys to go to Las Vegas, for you guys to get 2 days extra in Vegas, right? Because you're going to get Saturday night, no game Sunday, Sunday night, no game Monday. So you're going to get 2 extra days in Las Vegas. Plus, we're going to take everybody to U2 at the Sphere, which I don't know how much those tickets are, but when I was in Vegas for the Super Bowl, a bunch of my friends at Mad Dog Radio ended up going to U2 at the Sphere, and they were like, it was a freaking fortune, but it was worth it. But it was a fortune. And I'm not a U2 guy, so I probably, if I had had a free ticket, I probably would have gone, but I'm not going to pay to go see U2 because I'm just not a U2 guy. But again, the Predators are saying, hey, we're going to give you all this stuff. Well, you got to do your job. And I think Barry, again, realized that these dudes weren't doing their job. And so he sent a message. And I think it's great. Now, there was kind of a sentiment, too, about, well, what about the staff? What about all the extra, and look, Predators got a lot of people on staff, and I spent a lot of time with them. I didn't spend any time with the players, almost no time with the coaches, but I did spend a lot of time with staff. And I really like a lot of those people, and I've really liked a lot of those people for a long time. And those are some good people. But I've been staff before, right? I was a manager of the women's basketball team at Louisville. We were really, really good. Guess what? Nobody cared about my feelings or my opinions or what I wanted to do when it came to the team, and nobody should have. And I get it. Those guys make millions of bucks. They get a half of the year off. Those guys can go out. They can go to U2 whenever they want. The staff members, maybe not so much. But at the end of the day, if you're a staff member on that team, you know that your job, whether you're in equipment, video, broadcasting, whatever, you know your job is to do whatever it is to help the team win. I used to talk to Floyd about how much he loved Terry Porch, the guy who would manage the fields for the Titans, and Haas, Paul Noska, the equipment manager. I used to ask him one time, I said, why, you love those guys. You would take a bullet for those guys. And he said to me, yeah, because those guys would do whatever it takes to win a game. And that's all I needed to hear. And so, again, the whole idea of, well, but the staff, it's not fair. Those guys understand that everybody has a job because of that puck. And to get that puck in the other team's net, And everybody there gets it. So while absolutely I don't think the staff deserved, to have this exciting Vegas trip or whatever, I'm telling you that they understand, hey, if this is what's good for the team, this is what we're going to do. And so I don't have a problem being able to put myself in those shoes to say, yeah, it's probably not as fun as the alternative, but. And if Barry Trotz and Andrew Burnett have decisions to make about the team, well, they have to prioritize the team. So I understand, don't take it away from them and don't. Hey, man, it's a business now, and they will give you the best, but you got to give them the best effort in return. And I don't think it's about the losing either. I think it's about the way they played more than anything. 615-737-1025. We'll get back to your phones. 615, or we'll get into your phones. 615-737-1025. I was surprised to hear something on Friday about Andrew Burnett. I was surprised to hear this from the fans, or at least from one fan. And I do wonder if they're taking note of this. We'll get to that in your phones next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
One thing that really stood out to me was someone called me and said, you talked about the players, how they'd feel and why the team felt they did. And Barry Trotz, when I spoke to him, he was careful to say we don't have bad culture. But he said our standards had slipped below expectation. And he says when you have young players especially, you have to send them a message that you can't be rewarded if your standards and your preparation slips below your principles. And he said to me, particularly at home, and someone called me and he said, that's the part of the story you have to grab onto. He said, this is not about the Predators and their players. This is about the Predators and their fans. And he makes a great point. What is happening here is the Predators are going through a rebuild or a retool or whatever it is, and you are asking your fans to buy into that. You are asking your fans to believe in what you are trying to build. And what's Gord Stellick's famous line, Jeff? If you're going to stink, stink on the road. And what Barry Trotz, he said what Barry Trotz is telling the fans, and not only his players, is we will not tolerate those efforts in front of our fans paying their money to see us play.
Elliot on his podcast, and I don't know if you're a Preds fan, especially if you're a ticket holder, I don't know how you could hear that and say, man, I think that was a bad idea for Barry Trotz to stick him at home. No, that's Barry Trotz standing up for you. Because, again, I went to the game on Thursday, and I knew I was going with the team on Friday. So, basically, the way I figured it was that from the moment that I went with the team, that I was with the team, and then when we landed back in Nashville, I was back to being, the Jared Stillman who says whatever they want to say all the time. I think that's fair. But I knew I was going with the team on Thursday night on Friday to St. Louis, and I'm sitting at that just monstrosity of a game. And I'm like, oh, my God, this is embarrassing. This is awful. I went to the game with a buddy of mine from high school. And he and I, haven't hung out much lately, and so we go to the game. We're big fans. He goes with me to all kinds of games. And we're sitting there at this just bludgeoning. And I'm like, this is awful. Like, thanks for showing up, guys. And I love the fact that Barry Trotz is like, no, that's unacceptable. So I did hear something on Friday when I was doing the earlier shift in Chase and Big Joe's spot, and somebody called in and said, I think these Predators fans who are down on Andrew Burnett after 55 games need to calm down. And I was taken aback. I said, wait a minute. 55 games. People are down on Andrew Burnett? What are you down on Andrew Burnett for? I mean, what are we doing here? It's a rebuild. You know this. Barry came on the show. He said, be patient. And Robbie texted me. And Robbie said, there are some people that are saying that. Stupid people, but they're saying that. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And so I hope that those people that are down on Andrew Burnett, and I bet it's a very, 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 very small amount of people, but I hope that you people that are down on Andrew Burnett take note of this. Again, no nonsense around here. Here's the standard. You need to meet it. We're not expecting you to win the cup. We're expecting you to play hard every night you go out on the ice. We're expecting you to give your best effort. We're expecting you not to embarrass these fans who, even though we've told them, be patient, we're probably not cup contenders this year, it's going to be a little bit, these fans are still packing that arena. I hope you're taking note of that. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Kevin has been waiting patiently. He's going to kick us off today. Thank you for calling and waiting. What's up, Kevin?
You're welcome, Jared. In the early 70s, I forget when, one of Bear Bryant's teams at Alabama lost to Auburn because of 2 blocked punts. Now, a good friend of mine who was working there in the athletic department told me the next day, when the players rolled into their normally sumptuous football place with the food laid out and all those benefits, there was nothing in there but a whole bunch of jars of peanut butter and jelly and loaves of bread.
Sure.
So I agree with what you said, and certainly the Big Bear does also. See you
Yeah,
later.
I mean, I think it's a little different when we're talking about college and pros, and I also think, and thank you for your call, Kevin, and I think it's probably a little different when we're talking about something that happened 55 years ago as compared to now. But again, I think that the message is probably the same, right? Which is, I'll give you the best. And there is no doubt in my mind that when it comes to Barry Trotz and Andrew Burnett and Sean Henry and the guys running the Predators, there is no doubt that they will give those players everything and every advantage and everything. Like they'll give them whatever they need to win. But you got to meet me halfway. You got to meet me halfway. And that's where I think Barry felt like, again, the team wasn't meeting him halfway. And I also take stock in what Elliott said about, hey, if you're going to stink, you stink on the road. We're packing the building. Even though, again, the Predators right now are on the outside looking into the playoffs and may not make the playoffs, and told us before the year, told us last year that they were going to enter into a rebuild, told us before this year, fans be patient. And the fans are still showing up. Look, I love Darren McFarland with all my heart. I do. But I remember when I was begging for a rebuild, begging for it. And I remember Darren finger-wagging everybody and saying, hey, fans, we see these other arenas around the league of these teams that are rebuilding, and we see fans that aren't there. So you guys can call in today, and you can say that you want to rebuild, but are you going to stick with this team if that's what they try to do? Kind of the insinuation being that fans can say now we want to rebuild, but when the growing pains of the rebuild are happening, fans won't be there to support it. Well, guess what? I went Saturday against Arizona, Tuesday against Jersey, Thursday against Dallas, and there were Preds fans packing that building all three of those nights. I went to St. Louis on Saturday, and there were a lot of Preds fans in St. Louis, including a Let's Go Preds chant that was starting in the third period. So the fans are meeting the team halfway. And I think Barry would be the first person to tell you that. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think that he is incredibly appreciative of what the fans have been able to do. And I know this because I've talked to Barry about it. And so, again, this is hey, meet us halfway here. That's all we're asking for. A couple of people in the text line are mad because I brought up Matt Duchene and that Matt Duchene went to Tootsie's on Thursday night and got up and sung his tunes and played his music. And I said, look, he probably would have done that even if they had lost. But that's why, again, Matt Duchene's a good fit on a team where he can be a third-line secondary scoring option. And he's not expected to be one of the leaders. And people are texting in and they're saying, Jared, why do you care about Matt Duchene? He's not here anymore. He can do whatever he wants. I don't care about Matt Duchene. The point I was trying to make is that that's why Matt Duchene's not here. Matt Duchene, I believe, and I haven't looked at it, but he did score once on Thursday, and I don't know if he scored over the weekend, but Ryan O'Reilly scored on Saturday, and I think they both have 20 goals. Matt Duchene would be tied for second on goals with the Predators. I think he'd be I think he would be second in points. The Predators fired him, right? They didn't get draft picks in return. Tanner Jeannot was a business deal. They didn't want to give him a new contract, and Tampa Bay offered all those picks. That's business. Getting rid of Matt Duchene and getting nothing in return, that's not a business deal. That's just a we don't want this guy here anymore type deal. My point is Barry Trotz fired a guy who scores 20 goals pretty much every year, who certainly could help this team out offensively because he didn't want them around the young guys because what Duchene is really about, and the Predators, I think, have a large enough sample size to be able to know this about him personally, what they've seen is not something they think is conducive to success moving forward. That's the point I'm trying to make. The culture stuff, the responsibility, the accountability, the effort, that matters to Barry Trotz. And I know that it will say, well, it matters to everybody, but it is different. It is different when somebody really cares about it and then when somebody just says they care about it. Jerry Jones doesn't care about it. Barry Trotz does. Texter says, I think Hockey Night in Canada is treating it like they just took it away from the Predators, when I'm sure Trotz and Burnett did it because they felt like they didn't play hard enough or their very best. It wasn't just a random decision. I mean, again, these people have played in the league. I haven't played in the league. You know, Jennifer Botterill, as Vingan says, is one of the most accomplished women's hockey players in the world. And they're saying, well, that's not fair to take it away, and that's not. I think they'll be okay. I think the players will manage. I think it's okay. Justin says, also, if this ignites the team to be better and play better, those naysayers on Hockey Night will have to eat crow. I mean, I don't think they're going to be eating crow on it. They just didn't like the decision. I think it's like, again, boy, I really don't want to go with this, Ian. I really don't. I think it's like the Rand Carthon Senior Bowl thing. I really don't care. I'm just telling you I don't like it. And so I think, again, Hockey Night in Canada, they don't really care. They're just telling you, we didn't like it.
I guess that's fair.
Texter says, when my children's behavior is bad, they don't get rewarded for it. You as a parent withhold. Well, the texter says you withhold, but in this case he's talking about himself, so he should say I withhold. I get away from the PS5, from the phone, and I have them work on their attitude towards others. The Preds seem to need to work on their attitude to team first and giving their all to the team. Hockey Night in Canada are raising soft players. The Predators are building men on the ice in Nashville. When you're a leader, you lead your way. You do take advice, but this was a good move to me because it sends the right message. Tighten the belts, get your head on right, and at war, do not think about your vacation. Trips to Vegas? No. You look across the ice every night and deciding who is on your team and who is beside you. The NHL is the best of the best. Again, I like it too. I mean, I think that's a long, drawn-out way of saying, yeah, the Predators, or Andrew Burnett and Barry Trotz, sent the Predators to their room. Think about what you did. And go play hard tomorrow night. 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in. 615-737-1025. So DraftKings apparently has a new favorite for Derrick Henry, where they expect him to go next. And today is somewhat of an important day in the NFL and an important day from an accounting standpoint. We'll get into that too. Stillman and Company, 615-737-1025. If you want to weigh in again, that's 615-737-1025. Nashville's best deal of the week is Bavarian Beer House. That's right. Conveniently located at Opry Mills Mall. Enjoy beer, food, music, and fun at Nashville's only authentic German beer hall, where it's Oktoberfest every day. Head to theGameNashville.com/deals now to get a $50 gift card for only $25 to Bavarian Beer House while supplies last. Think about the future between Derrick Henry and the Titans.
I would love to see him stay. I think he would be a great, continued addition, not addition, but for Brian, for the father, for Coach Callahan to come in as well and work with that run game. I think it's really important to maintain. Now, I know there's going to be people out there knocking on the door, but for how much, right? What's going to be the situation?
But I just don't think there's going to be a lot of money. I think he's going to get out there thinking he's going to get $8-10 million bucks, and it's going to be like 1 year up to 4.5.
It's going to be a Dalvin Cook situation, right? Maybe. I'm not saying that they were. I'm just saying, is it going to be that? What did Dalvin get? $7 million?
Something like that. Well, up to.
Up to. Yeah, it's going to be an up to situation.
Absolutely.
I would love to watch you guys or see you guys continue to have him there because I think it's important. I think it would be great if he took a deep breath and realized he wanted to play for this situation. That's what I think personally. It would be nice to have him there.
Thomas Dimitroff, former NFL general manager on our show at the Super Bowl, saying the money for Derrick Henry, who knows? So last night, I saw, one of these NFL aggregation rumor accounts that put out there that the Ravens are the favorites to sign Derrick Henry. But it didn't say per anybody. It didn't say, per Jeremy Fowler, per Adam Schefter, per Ian Rappaport, per Diana Rossini, per Jared Stillman. It didn't say any of that. And so then I had to do digging on, where is this Derrick Henry Ravens? Where's this coming from? Apparently, DraftKings has the Ravens as the favorites for Derrick Henry at plus 200. Now, first and foremost, let's not let the betting markets dictate what's going to happen. I remember when Bobby Slowick was the betting favorite to become the Titans head coach. So let's keep that in mind. But then I think about the Ravens. And I'm like, here's the question for the Ravens and every other team that might consider Derrick Henry. Gus Edwards is a free agent. Gus Edwards has been the running back of the Ravens for a long time. Now, if I ran the Ravens, I would argue that Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson together could be really dangerous. Could it be put them over the top against Mahomes in a playoff game dangerous? I don't know. But I do think that Lamar and Henry together could be dangerous. But is it that much better than what they already have with Gus Edwards? The chemistry between Lamar and Gus Edwards, it's real. And again, the big criticism of the Ravens in the AFC Championship game was not that the Ravens couldn't do it with Gus Edwards. It's that they didn't give him the ball. And again, what is a Gus Edwards-like contract going to be compared to a Derrick Henry contract? So if Derrick is coming in at $7 or $8 million and Gus Edwards is at a veteran minimum of $1.3 million, if you're the Ravens, aren't you better off going with Gus Edwards so you can turn around and give more of that money to Justin Madubuike? Or maybe somebody else in free agency? So, again, I see that, and this is the question I have with Derrick Henry in every possible team outside of the Titans. And even with the Titans, I think we have to consider this a little bit too. But Derrick Henry compared to the alternative is a difference of what? Are the Ravens all of a sudden favored to beat the Chiefs if they add Derrick Henry? I don't think so. So with every single one of these teams, what is their option right now at running back? Okay? So when it comes to the Bills, because everyone's like, oh, the Bills need Derrick Henry. They already have James Cook. I can promise you that they'll tell themselves James Cook on a rookie deal as compared to Derrick Henry at $7 or $8 million, or again, whatever it is that Derrick ends up coming in at. Those two things are not comparable. I mean, they'd much rather go with James Cook. And then if you're a team who, again, is looking at the running back market and they're saying, well, we can add this guy for $3 million and $2 million. Like Zach Moss is a good runner and he's going to be out there. Those guys aren't 30 years old yet. And Derrick is. That being said, again, if I ran the Ravens, I would be the guy in the room who's banging on the table saying, hey, I think Lamar and Derrick could be deadly to any team if we get a lead. Almost every game that we play, if a team gets down to us in the first half, it's over because we've got Derrick and we've got Lamar. The problem is that the argument back would be it's already over if you're playing catch up against Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. So why pay more money for them to have to play more catch up? So again, I have no idea what the market for Derrick Henry is going to be. I have no idea if Derrick Henry's prowess over the years has enticed one owner so much that they're like, we need him. But if the Ravens really did want Derrick Henry that bad, don't you think they would have found a way to trade for Derrick Henry before the deadline this year? Again, the Titans knew they weren't contending for a Super Bowl. They waved the white flag when they traded Kevin Byard. Now, it sounds like, and I don't know how accurate this is, but Mike Florio's reported this, which, again, leads me to questioning its accuracy, that Vrabel was the one who said no on trading a DeAndre Hopkins or trading a Derrick Henry. And I would agree with that because, again, I think that Derrick Henry and DeAndre Hopkins are really important for the young quarterback. But I would also say no on trading them unless somebody decided to give me something good. Like if it's the same 5th and 6th round pick in a draft where the 5th and 6th round might be more like the 7th round and undrafted free agents, I'm not interested in that for Derrick Henry. You want to offer me 2 second-round picks for Derrick Henry? You want to offer me the Von Miller package where Denver got a 2nd and a 3rd for Von Miller? I'll drive Derrick to the airport. So I'm guessing the Titans didn't get offered that, which makes me think that the Ravens, and I believe the Ravens were one of the 2 teams Derrick Henry said really wanted him. You know, the AFC teams that he said on Bussin' with the Boys that really wanted him. I'm sure he was probably one of those, you know, that the Ravens were one of those 2 teams. But if they wanted him bad enough, they would have gotten him. And so they didn't want him that bad. So am I supposed to believe that now that the Ravens really want him that bad? One texter says, I could see the Packers signing Henry to maybe a 2-year deal because him and Aaron Jones would be insane together. Do you know who the coach of the Green Bay Packers is? He's the same coach that put David Fluellen ahead of Derrick Henry on the depth chart. I think that's a non-starter. Of all the places where Derrick could go, Green Bay is not even in the galaxy of teams that Derrick Henry might go. One texter into the text line says, when it comes to the Titans and it comes to the Ravens, don't you think that Derrick wants a better chance for a Super Bowl with a real contender to bolster his Hall of Fame chances with a ring? I mean, I think, again, these guys care about the money, and they care about the respect that the money represents. So I don't think Derrick is going to go to the Chiefs just because the Chiefs have a better shot at winning a ring, and he'll take veteran minimum to go play for the Chiefs as opposed to $6 or $7 or $10 million somewhere else. And the one advice I would give Derrick Henry is his agents are going to be at the combine just like everybody else, and tampering will be aplenty. And if they're not hearing what they want to hear, if they don't have contenders that are offering them comparable money, he might want to jump to re-sign with the Titans before we get into free agency and all of a sudden there's not that money out there. And Derrick's like Dalvin Cook and just sitting, and Zeke and just sitting and sitting and sitting. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. I was at the Preds game on Saturday in St. Louis, but I was keeping my eyes on Twitter, and I saw the Vandy, Tennessee basketball score. Holy crap. Well, I've got a message after that game on Saturday. And normally my message is for the fans, right? Because I know that I'm talking to people in their cars right now that are fans, that are listening, that are coming up next. My message isn't for the fans, but it needs to be heard. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3. The game streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. So I was at the Predators game on Saturday. So I wasn't watching the Tennessee Vandy basketball game, but I was perusing my phone, and of course people were tweeting about the 31-point lead that Tennessee had built up at halftime. 31 points. It was a disastrous game. It was so bad that Dalton Knecht led Tennessee with 14 points, which tells me that Tennessee wasn't, emptying the barrels. That it was, hey, let's let everybody play. Let's let everybody get the ball. Let's let everybody. We got the cut of the final play-by-play call, where Kevin Ingram is, wrapping the broadcast up, and these guys passing the ball around I've never heard of before for Tennessee. Never heard of them. It was embarrassing. And embarrassing is one thing, right? Like Vanderbilt got embarrassed the week of the Super Bowl at home against Kentucky, and that's bad. Embarrassing to your rival and having your rival laugh at you and having your rival wipe their rear ends with you like toilet paper is unacceptable, and I don't care what school you are. Which takes us to the big picture with Vandy. Normally, when I get on the air and I have my opinions and I lay them out there, it's for you, the fans. You guys discuss it. You guys agree with it. You guys disagree with it, but it's for you. But every now and then, I say things because I know the teams will hear it and I want them to hear it. So when it comes to Vanderbilt, Candace Lee has no choice. She has to fire Jerry Stackhouse. Now, the question, again, isn't about choice, yay or nay. The choice that she has is whether she should have done it yesterday or at the end of the season. Now, I would have voted for yesterday, which is very out of touch with what Vanderbilt usually does, but that is what they did to Derrick Mason, the football coach. But here's why I would have done it yesterday. Because I think that it would have restored some fan confidence in the administration. To lose to Tennessee by 1 million points the way they did and just finally saying on Sunday, enough is enough. We see you guys not showing up for the games. We are as embarrassed about just getting housed by Tennessee as you all are. We're tired of not making the tournament. We're tired of losing to Presbyterian. We're tired of it. It's over. A new era starts tomorrow. Fans, you get what you want. Stackhouse is gone. Because it won't change anything about the season. But there are a lot of fans that have anxiety that Vanderbilt will not hear them out and will bring him back for another season. Because what I'm afraid about is I'm afraid about a sentiment that does exist. That Candace Lee doesn't want to fire Jerry Stackhouse. Now, I can't imagine how she wouldn't want to fire Jerry Stackhouse, given how bad the basketball team is and how irrelevant they are in town. But Gentry Estes wrote this the first week of February. Quote, Gentry wrote, quote, I'm here to tell you not to assume that Jerry Stackhouse is going to be fired. It's not a slam dunk decision, Gentry wrote. A.D. Candace Story Lee, herself a former Vanderbilt basketball player, has long been a staunch believer in Stackhouse's coaching ability. Her and Joe Rexrode, the only two. Her confidence was emboldened by last season's strong finish, which earned Stackhouse co-SEC Coach of the Year honors. And Gentry wrote on February 3rd, I've gotten no sense that her faith has dwindled. I don't believe that Lee wants to move on from Stackhouse at this point. Again, that was 2 weeks ago. The Kentucky game has happened since then. The Tennessee game has happened since then. But I'm just going to be real with Candace Story here. Candace Story Lee, excuse me. I'm just going to be real. I like Candace. I think she's sharp. I think she's a good person. And as I've gotten to know her running Vanderbilt, I think her heart's in the right place. I really do. Now, that doesn't mean that I've agreed with everything she's done, because I don't think they treated Derrick Mason very well on his way out the door. I thought he deserved another season. Again, all SEC games, the most liberal university in the Southeastern Conference, thus the most opt-outs. during COVID, and they still fired him. I didn't think that was fair. And I didn't like the way that they treated Ryan Littman, who's one of the most accomplished tennis players in Vanderbilt history, who was an assistant coach. Now, again, this is more personal probably than it is business, because I consider Ryan Littman a great friend. But this guy was one of the best tennis players they've ever had in the history of Vandy tennis. And he was an assistant coach for years and years and years. And he gets passed over for the head coaching job, which I think had been kind of laid out as being his in the future. So I haven't agreed with everything she's done, but I do like her. And I do have a lot of respect for her. But if she brings Jerry Stackhouse back, if that sentiment that Gentry Estes expressed 2 weeks ago, the idea that I haven't gotten, as he wrote, that he doesn't believe that Lee wants to move on from Stackhouse, then the discussion has got to change from Jerry Stackhouse to her. There is no way you can bring this guy back as basketball coach, given the state of the program, and justify to me that you've got a clue as to what you're doing. Now, we got a rule on this show that nobody gets in trouble for something they haven't done. And Candace Lee has not retained Jerry Stackhouse as coach for next season. But I'm just telling you right now, if you bring him back, then the discussion has to be about you. If Vanderbilt brings Jerry Stackhouse back, then the discussion has to be about them. It is no longer about Jerry Stackhouse. Jerry Stackhouse has proven he cannot do the job even to the average standards with which Vanderbilt has. Jerry Stackhouse never should have been hired to be the head basketball coach at Vanderbilt. He had no college basketball experience. None. He was a good minor league coach. That would be like Vanderbilt or any other SEC baseball program going and hiring the guy who's coaching the Sounds because, well, he did a good job. That's what they did. He should have never been hired for a job that he wasn't qualified for by an athletic director who should have never been athletic director. Malcolm Turner's tenure was an unmitigated disaster. Jerry Stackhouse has accomplished nothing in 5 years since he got the job. And last year, in which they really got hot at the end of the year but still didn't make the tournament because they screwed around too much in December, in my opinion, got completely washed away when they came out and opened the season this year with a loss at home against Presbyterian. Does anybody even know what state Presbyterian's in? Ian, do you know what state Presbyterian's in?
South Carolina?
I think it's South Carolina. I think you're right. And I think we talked about this when they lost to Presbyterian.
Yeah, this has been brought up before.
The gym is a ghost town over at Memorial. And as college basketball recruiting becomes more of an arms race, more about NIL, more about transfer portal, more about Jerry Stackhouse gets caught further and further behind. It'd be one thing if it were possible for Jerry to build on the momentum that they had at the end of last year. The problem is the entire freaking team transferred. So something is not right there. And so I can't imagine, but I don't want to speak for, I cannot imagine that the alumni, the donors, or the administration can accept Jerry Stackhouse's results. And I'd love to believe that Candace Lee can't either. But I don't know that. Again, Gentry wrote, she believes in Stackhouse. She likes Stackhouse. She's extended Stackhouse. And then as of 2 weeks ago, he didn't believe that she wanted to fire Stackhouse. Well, I got to tell you this. If after Saturday, if after the Kentucky game, if Candace cannot see that Jerry Stackhouse is the problem, then Candace might be the problem. Again, I'm not saying she is the problem. And as I've said, I don't get mad at people for things they haven't done. And I'm not assuming that she's going to do this. But if Jerry Stackhouse returns as basketball coach for a sixth season, then the discussion's not about Jerry Stackhouse anymore. The discussion is about the people who are allowing Jerry Stackhouse to be the basketball coach. Because Vanderbilt fans, and I understand, because I grew up a Vanderbilt fan, but Vanderbilt fans, they deserve better. I'm not saying Vanderbilt deserves a coach who's going to take them to the Final Four every year, but I don't think those are the expectations for Vanderbilt fans. I think enjoying exciting basketball in the month of March every couple of years is the expectation at Vanderbilt, and Jerry ain't meeting it. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Now, there has been a sentiment of optimism for the last, 3 or 4 years over at Vanderbilt athletically, and there is progress that I, in previous years, have not seen. But if Jerry Stackhouse comes back as coach, there's something that I don't ever want to hear from anybody over there ever again. We'll do that next, and we'll get to your phone. 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game.
Tennessee led 51-20 at halftime. It's been pretty close in the second half, 37-33 in favor of the Volunteers, but the game was out of hand by the intermission. Here's Keefe to a posting Lang. Has his man behind him. Makes his way in toward the paint, trying to shoot a fadeaway off the front rim. No good. Tennessee got the rebound, and they can run out the clock. As Hurst hands it off to DeLeon. He arrives front court. And the big crowd at Thompson Bowling Arena salutes their team on their way to a 19th win. They go to 19-6 and 9-3 in SEC play. Vanderbilt 7-18, 2-10. Rick Barnes and Jerry Stackhouse, North Carolina Hall of Famers, exchange handshakes. Tennessee 88, the Commodores 53.
Basically, the game, our key guys, Ben, Tyron, as they're in the game and they're minus 34, minus 35, minus 31. We ain't got a chance in hell, and we didn't have that tonight.
I mean, with all of our guys not playing well, what am I supposed to do? Yes, Jerry, it is your job. And Jerry Stackhouse is the definition. Like, and in all seriousness, he may be one of the least accountable coaches I've ever seen. But Jerry Stackhouse is always blaming the players. It's always their fault. It's never his fault. I mean, what am I supposed to do when these guys don't play well? It's your job to get them to play well. That's why you're the coach. Now, I want to say this. And I think Vanderbilt, they've been great partners to us as we are the flagship home of Vandy Athletics. And one thing I love about Vandy is that just like the Predators, they don't tell us what to say or what not to say, and I appreciate that. I have never met the chancellor at Vanderbilt, but when he took the job, and I think he took the job around, 2019 or 2020 or something like that, I was told that this chancellor gets it, that this chancellor believes in athletics, that this chancellor is going to invest in athletics. And then they launched the Vandy United Fund, and they talked about all these facilities, and I said, I'll buy Vanderbilt the idea that they're actually going to try to improve the football stadium when I see a shovel in the ground. Until then, I'm not going to pay any attention to any of this because Vanderbilt for years has been talking about fixing the football stadium, and Vanderbilt for years has done nothing. So when they did put the shovels in the ground, I had to give them credit. When people were taking pot shots at Vanderbilt because of the football stadium with that, weird floating scoreboard and those piles of dirt in the end zone last year, I said, look, you cannot criticize Vanderbilt year after year after year after year for not doing anything about fixing their football stadium and then be mad at them while they're fixing their football stadium. You can't do that. You got to give credit where credit's due, that they're actually doing something. But if Jerry Stackhouse returns as the basketball coach after this year, I don't ever want to hear that this new chancellor cares about athletics. I think we all understand why Vandy stinks at football. What's not as acceptable is stinking this poorly at basketball consistently. So again, the new chancellor comes in, everybody tells me he cares, they launch Vandy United. That's great. If you keep this coach, then you do not care. It is as simple as that. I saw the attendance was 6,000 plus for the A&M game, which is, by the way, pathetic. But I saw pictures of what that building looked like. I'd be shocked if they actually had 3,000 people at the building. I'm dead serious. 6,000? No way. At least not based off the pictures that I saw. The best word that I can use to describe Vandy basketball right now is misery. And so I can't imagine that those that are in charge over there, and they just can't turn off the 31-point game the way that the rest of us can. Just, Vanderbilt stinks at basketball, click. They can't do that. I can't imagine they're not living the same misery. And so, again, Gentry Estes wrote that he doesn't think Candace Lee, and again, this was a couple weeks ago, so maybe the Kentucky embarrassment and the Tennessee embarrassment, maybe those have, changed her mind a little bit. But Gentry has written that he doesn't think that Candace Lee wants to fire Jerry Stackhouse. Well, let me tell you this. If I was the chancellor, Candace would have a choice to make. She can either do it or I'll do it for her. And if I do it for her, then she's probably going too. So if Stackhouse comes back, it's not just on Candace. but it's on the entire administration. And I don't want to hear that. Again, Clark Lee, they had a miserable season this year in football. I think Clark deserves another year. I really do. If it's similar this year to what it was last year, as much as I like Clark Lee, as much as I think he's a smart guy and a good coach, and I was shocked with how bad they were this past season. Shocked. After the 5-win year they had the year before. He's probably not going to be the coach after next year. But Jerry's in year 5. There's no progress there. It's time to go. 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in. Again, the phone number, 615-737-1025. One texter says, I bought season tickets this year, expecting them to give me, I bought season tickets to basketball, and I watched them get beat by Presbyterian, and I had seen enough. I refused to go back there until there was a competent head coach. Another texter says, this is the curse of Kevin Stallings. Nothing has been the same since they fired him. Well, technically, they didn't fire him. Technically, Kevin Stallings got a better job at Pittsburgh, where he was absolutely horrific and fired after 2 years. He was the Jerry Stackhouse of Pittsburgh, and they fired him because that's what they do at Pittsburgh and other places. They fire, including Louisville, who's got just as bad of a coach as Jerry Stackhouse, if not worse. And guess what they're going to do? They're going to fire him. See, I have no anxiety about my school at Louisville firing the coach because I know they're going to do it. It's obvious. I know how they care. I know what the record is. I know how bad it's been. And some of those fans, like I go on the radio there every week, and I listen to the shows, and I know that there are some fans that are incredibly anxious at the idea that Kenny Payne's going to get a third year. I just know in my heart he's not going to do it. I'm not worried about it. That's how I felt about Jerry Stackhouse until Gentry Estes told me that he wrote 2 weeks ago, and he did. I went and looked it up, that he wasn't convinced 2 weeks ago, according to his column, that Candace Lee wanted to move on from Jerry Stackhouse. And I heard that, and I was like, wait a minute, what? So one texter, Skylar, and I've always said there are 3 sets of people that listen to this show. There are the people that love me and love the show. There are the people that hate me, but they do love the show. And then there are the people that hate me and hate the show. Ian, of that grouping, which one do you think listens to the show the most?
Maybe they hate you and hate the show?
Bingo. I think Skylar's one of these people. Because he always texts in, and he's always mad at me, and he's always... So Skylar texts in and goes, not Jared Stillman calling for somebody's job. So I texted back. And I said, okay, fine. Defend Jerry Stackhouse. And he said, screw Vandy, LOL. I said, that's not how this works. If you want to get on me, because Skylar in the text line is not the only person who's done this. I've had people that have said to me, oh, you just want to fire all the coaches. That's all you want to do. And that's not fair. The coaches I want to fire are the coaches who deserve to be fired. I didn't want Mike Mularkey fired. I didn't want Peter Laviolette fired. I didn't argue for those. I didn't argue for John Robinson being fired because I didn't think John Robinson should have been fired when they fired him. I argued for Ken Wisenhunt to be fired. I argued for John Hines to be fired. I argued for David Poyle to be maybe guided into retirement. I called for Mike Vrabel to be fired. I've called for Jerry Stackhouse to be fired, and I've called for Rand Carthon to be fired. I don't feel bad about a single one of those. And I know that there are some of you that think, oh, well, Rand Carthon's going to do a great job. You'll see, Jared. And you're right. We'll see. We'll see. I feel pretty confident that Rand, and I hope I'm wrong, I feel confident in the decision that the decision desk has made. But I don't regret any of those other ones. There's only been one coach in the 9 years I've been doing this. There has only been one coach who I have regretted calling for their firing. And it was Derek Mason, the old Vandy coach. He's the only one. So don't get on me saying, oh, Jared Stillman just wants to fire the coach. No, Jerry Stackhouse has earned this the same way that Ken Wisenhunt earned it the same way that Mike Vrabel earned it, the same way that I felt like John Hines and David Poyle earned it. Jerry Stackhouse has earned this. John Matt from Brentwood says, I'm a diehard Vanderbilt fan and have been for my entire life, especially basketball. Look, basketball is the number one sport at Vanderbilt. Like, I know they're best at baseball, but more people, I think, if Vandy is good at basketball, care about Vandy basketball than care about Vandy baseball. John Matt says, didn't even know they were playing Tennessee last Saturday. That's how bad it has been. Again, a diehard Vanderbilt fan. I didn't know that either. Like, I'm at the Preds game. I'm like, oh, Vandy's playing Tennessee. Oh, Vandy's down 31 points at halftime. Texter says, I'm a Vols fan. I think Vandy's doing great. And I love Vanderbilt's administration. Exactly. Austin says, don't forget about Craig Aukerman when it comes to your coaches that you've put on your hot seat. Well, let me just tell you this right now. I never celebrate somebody getting fired. But when those 2 punts got blocked, I mean, I looked at it like, I tried to tell you guys so. I tried to tell you. And, well, feel good about that one, too. 615-737-1025. Speaking of the Titans, 615-737-1025. It's mock draft season. And Joel Klatt at Fox Sports, their lead college football analyst, he's got a mock draft. And yet, while it seems to be the in vogue pick to the Titans, I do wonder, given the draft, if this would be the right decision. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
That leaves the Titans on the clock. And the Titans, they gave up the 4th most sacks in the league last year. And this draft is heavy on offensive tackles. This is one of the things that I really love about this draft is that we've got a lot of quarterbacks. We've got very good wide receivers, and we've got a really good, deep group of offensive linemen. This has not been the case in every single draft. And this year, certainly, you've got a good, deep group of offensive linemen. And because of that, I do think that there's going to be some differences and variance in the way that teams evaluate these players. I don't know if there is a surefire number one offensive tackle based on their differences. I think teams may evaluate these guys a bit differently. Now, it would surprise me a great deal if Joe Alt were not one of the first 2, at least, on the board. I think he's going to be a consensus up there in the top 2. He's my top tackle, so I like Joe Alt from Notre Dame going to Tennessee there with the number 7 pick.
That was Joe Alt. His mock draft is out. Joe Alt going to the Titans at 7. That was Joel Klatt with Joe Alt going to the Titans at 7. And so he has the Titans drafting Joe Alt. And he actually has him drafting Joe Alt over Malik Neighbors. He's got Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, Marvin Harrison Jr., Brock Bowers at 5 to the Chargers, and Roma Dunze at 6 to the Giants, which means the Titans could be on the board with both Alt and Neighbors. I'd have a hard time not drafting Malik Neighbors, but I get it. But here's my thing on the Joe Alt train, because a lot of you are just Alt. In fact, Jim Wyatt does a thing at the Titans website called Touring the Mock Drafts. And I remember I asked him about this maybe last year. I said, how popular in terms of clicks is the roundup of what all the mock drafters are mocking? How popular is that? He says it is one of the most clicked on things that he does. People want to see who everybody has on mock drafting. So he goes out, and he probably gets 40 mock drafts, if I had to guess, somewhere around that. And I was skimming through the latest tour of the mock drafts, and they had the Titans drafting all the same player, right? It was either Olu Fashanu, the tackle out of Penn State, Joe Alt, the tackle out of Notre Dame, and I think there was like one that had Malik Neighbors and one that had Roma Dunze, and that was it. Everybody is saying at 7, either Olu Fashanu or Joe Alt. But what Joel brought up was the fact that this seems to be a very strong tackle draft. Joel's not the first person who said that. Trevor Maddich comes on our show every week, and he has talked about how strong the tackles in the first round are in this draft. Field Yates at ESPN, who's kind of their number 2 draft guy with Mel Kiper Jr., Field Yates told us at the Super Bowl that, hey, there's probably about 8 or 9 tackles that are going to go in the first round because teams like Kansas City, Dallas, Cincinnati, those teams that are good, they need tackles, so they're going to draft them. But there's probably only about 6 or 7 of those 8 or 9 tackles that are going to be ready to play day one. So I ask you this. If you're sitting in a spot with the 7th pick where Joe Alt's available, where Malik Neighbors is available, is Joe Alt that good that you have to take him and you don't trade down in the first round and get one of these other tackles? Now, look, again, it's easy to say, well, there's 5 tackles there, so let's get one of the 5. When the first tackle might be really, really good, and the 5th tackle might be okay, but he's not that good. And again, that's where the individual grades on the board come into effect. Floyd told me that they had it based out of 10 and that nobody ever gets a 10. So 7 is usually the highest that these guys get. And he told me, for instance, Eddie George is a 7, Marcus Mariota was a 7, those kind of numbers. If Joe Alt's a 7 and Olu Fashanu is a 6.75, and Fawunga or whatever his name is out of Oregon State, he's a 6.65, and the kid out of Oklahoma is a 6.55, And if all these tackles are all good and they all get the Bill Callahan thumbs up of approval, is Joe Alt really that much better than what the Titans could get by trading back knowing that there will be a tackle available? Now, if the Titans trade back out of 7 and they go to pick 24, for instance, there may not be a tackle there that would be as equipped as, say, Joe Alt. But the Titans could trade back from 7 to 10 and pick up a third-round draft choice, the third-rounder they don't have for Will Levis, and they will still for sure get a tackle. Like the Mims kid out of Georgia, he will for sure still be there. So then the question has to be, okay, well, this is a really deep receiver draft, and I think this is a decent corner draft. Again, all of your needs. Is adding that extra receiver or that extra corner worth the difference between Joe Alt and Alu Fashanu with the 10th overall pick or the 11th overall pick? And I went through the draft trade chart, and so I went through literally every pick in the first round if the Titans were to trade down, and what the trade chart says the Titans should get. Now, again, a lot of times teams will pay over what the trade chart says that they need to pay just because they want the player so bad. And in the case of Joel Klatt's mock draft, I think there is a realistic possibility that'll happen because, again, he's got Malik Neighbors on the board with the 7th pick. And if you want Malik Neighbors, you've got to get to my pick because I might take Malik Neighbors. But anything past the 17th pick is a first-round pick for sure. So if you want to trade to move up from 18 to 7, you've got to give me your first-rounder next year or another first-rounder this year. But again, if I don't want to move to 18, then you really want the player, you're probably going to have to give me more. You're probably going to have to, because again, I can just take Malik Neighbors if I want to. I can just take Joe Alt if I want to. But this is where the ranking of the tackles will become incredibly important. If Joe Alt is the only guy who checks all of the boxes that Bill Callahan approves of, that's a day one left tackle, that's ready for the NFL, that has a clean medical history, that if he's the only one there, then you probably have to take him. Because free agency, it's just not good for tackles. If you do like the other tackles, if you do like Mims out of Georgia, if you do like Fashanu, if you do like these other guys, again, there's a ton of them that are going to be there in the first round. Is Joe Alt, the difference between Joe Alt and those guys, really not worth moving to 12 and picking up a second-round pick in this year's draft? So now you've got 2. Or moving to 16 and picking up a 2 this year and a 3 next year. Just something to keep in mind. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. 615-737-1025. We'll get to your takes on that. And again, if Malik Neighbors is on that board with the 7th pick. Now, I've seen a lot of these mock drafts that have Rome Odunze as potentially available. I haven't seen a lot of them that have Neighbors. So we'll get to that. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Twice daily. That's right. I love Twice Daily. I went to Twice Daily yesterday, and I ordered up a chicken, egg, and cheese bagel. That's right. I was craving it. I went to Twice Daily. I ordered it right up. And they do have the French toast bagel, which at some point I probably will have to try out. But Twice Daily wants to send you to Italy. Buy any made-to-order Italian sub and use your rewards app, and you can get entered to win. And every sub is a chance to win. And mobile-ordered Italian subs will count as 2 times the entry. Visit twicedaily.com for sweepstakes. Again, Twice Daily has made-to-order offerings to allow you to get exactly what you want when you want it. And again, you can customize sandwiches and bagels exactly like I did yesterday. Preferred meats, cheeses, all the fixings, whatever you want. Snacks like a pretzel prepared for you right when you order. You make it yours, they make it fresh. Download the Twice Daily app today and join their loyalty program to unlock special discounts, savings, and so much more. It pays to be a member with Twice Daily, where you earn points and save money on every visit. Get what you crave at Twice Daily. If you're looking for convenience, Twice Daily has you covered. Twice Daily, fresh all day.
the board shapes up well for them. And I'm telling you, there are teams, a slot, maybe 2 slots behind them, maybe 3 slots behind them, where the board does not shape up nearly as nicely. I really believe that. Now, obviously, if the forecast that I had for the first 4 picks goes differently, maybe it does. Like if for some reason those quarterbacks start to slide, then they might be. It might not be as favorable of a spot for Tennessee because obviously I think Will Levis is probably the guy going forward. I guess they could take a quarterback. I'd be surprised by that. Very surprised by that, I should say. But if those wide receivers are off the board and Joe Alt's off the board, it creates a different dynamic. So, but assuming it goes how I've currently forecasted, the board shapes up extremely well for them.
That was Phil Yates on our show at the Super Bowl. And I'm just, again, going back to Joel Klatt's mock draft, where he's got Caleb Williams going number 1, no surprise. Drake May, number 2, no surprise. Jaden Daniels, number 3 to New England, no surprise. Marvin Harrison, number 4, no surprise. Brock Bowers at 5, that's a surprise. And then Roma Dunze at 6, which means the Titans at 7. He's got him taking Joe Alt. But the Titans at 7 would then be picking between Alt, Neighbors, or a trade. And I think if people are calling you for the 7th pick in that scenario, they're calling you for Neighbors. And I would just say I'd have a really, really hard time passing on Malik Neighbors over anybody in this draft for the Titans. And I'm going to be dead serious with you. I think, and again, I would have the proprietary information if I were the GM, for instance, of the scouts and the assistant GMs and the coach and everything else. But I would have that proprietary information that kind of ranks those players one way or another. And I'd hear what the scouts have to say and all of that. I feel like if I was on the board and I needed a receiver and Marvin Jr. was there, I think I'd have to take him. But in my gut, I think Malik Neighbors might end up being the better NFL player. Like, I think Malik Neighbors might be a superstar. And I have thought that the entire college season. Now, I'm starting to love Roma Dunze. But I didn't love Roma Dunze the whole college season. I also didn't watch Washington as much as I watched the SEC. And I'd have a hard time not taking Malik Neighbors. Skyler texts in, the guy who hates me so much, and says, take Neighbors if he's there and take a left tackle in the second round or trade back. I know. And I hate agreeing with somebody that hates me. That's how I feel if Neighbors is there. If I'm picking at 7 and Neighbors and Alt are both on the board, it is either Neighbors or I'm trading back. That's it. If Neighbors is available. Christopher is in Brentwood. He's been hanging on patiently. Thank you for calling and waiting. What's up, Christopher?
How good is Malik Neighbors going to be if the quarterback is getting blown up in 2.5 seconds?
How good is Jamar Chase? The quarterback's been getting blown up there, Christopher. Christopher, Cincinnati, and your coach comes from Cincinnati. Cincinnati was faced with the exact same conundrum, and their quarterback has gotten blown up. But Jamar Chase is still pretty good.
Yeah, but their quarterback is injured. How long are they betting their entire life, the next 10 years on the receiver or on the quarterback? They're betting on the quarterback.
Right.
And the quarterback keeps getting injured because the line is getting them blown up.
Right. But I'm going to take you back to Cincinnati, which, again, is where your coach comes from. And I'm going to ask you, if you think this is Jamar Chase, do you not take him? Because your coach has already told you that when it came down to Penei Sewell and Jamar Chase, we love both players. We thought they both were going to be 10-time Pro Bowlers, but I wanted Jamar Chase. And if the things are all equal here, he's probably going to think the same thing going forward.
I understand that. I just think that's a huge mistake. It doesn't matter how good the receiver is if the quarterback can't. If the quarterback doesn't have time for the receiver to get open and for the play to develop and to be able to deliver the ball to him, it just doesn't matter.
Okay, I don't disagree with you. I understand what you're saying. I appreciate your call. But here's the other part, too, right? So there's Jonah Williams, right, that comes from the Bengals, and he kind of sucked. But I was kind of reading through, Randy Mueller, the old Dolphins general manager. He was the GM of the Dolphins. I think he was also the GM of the Chargers. And he was the GM of the Dolphins when Nick Saban was the coach. And he broke down like his top 50 free agents. And he talked about Jonah Williams of the Bengals. and how Jonah Williams, for instance, is not the greatest player in the world, but Jonah Williams does offer the versatility of being able to play left tackle or right tackle, and he's got decent athleticism, and he can do it. My gut tells me that the way that Brian Callahan is going to want to operate is give me the stars at receiver and tight end and running back and quarterback. Give me basic and average on the offensive line. Like, give me just a little bit on the offensive line. And it's not going to be perfect. We're not going to be the Eagles, but we'll get by. My gut is that is how Brian Callahan operates. So I hear you, because a lot of people are going to say, well, if we don't take the tackle, Jared, it won't matter because it won't. Cincinnati, exact same position. Your coach has gone on record on this program and has said, when we were in Cincinnati, I voted for the premium elite touchdown scorer over the premium elite non-touchdown scorer. And Neighbors might be that good. Like, one of the reasons why I am so staunch in this is because I do think Neighbors is, again, I told you that, like, I'm not a fan of Caleb Williams. I'm not a huge fan of Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm just not. Now, I'm not a fan of them for different reasons. But if I had the number one pick in this draft and I needed a quarterback, I would have to draft Williams, right? Like, he is ranked as a generational prospect. He's ranked much higher than all the other quarterback prospects. And while maybe I'd rather have Jaden Daniels or Drake May, I'm stuck in this spot at number one because I've got to take the quarterback. And if I don't take the quarterback that is a superstar, then he becomes a superstar somewhere else. I'm screwed. If I'm Washington, for instance, I can take either of the other two quarterbacks. Don't have to take Williams because I can't take Williams. And if Williams becomes a star, I'm not getting fired over it. It is the reality of where they sit. And there's a difference there. And so I again, like, when it comes to Marvin Harrison Jr., I'm not the biggest Marvin Jr. fan. If I was a GM and I was on the board and I was choosing between Marvin Harrison or Malik Neighbors, I would probably have to take Marvin Harrison because the grades would probably be so much higher for Marvin than they would be for Malik Neighbors. But I think Malik Neighbors is going to be the better NFL player. And there's only one shot. See, I don't even think that Malik Neighbors is going to be available at 7. But if he is available at 7, as he is in Joel Klatt's mock draft, if he's available, you've only got one shot to be able to get a Malik Neighbors. That's it. So then your question is, would you feel better with Calvin Ridley at wide receiver than you would with Malik Neighbors? And I think your coach would rather have Malik Neighbors than trying to go the free agent route. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Again, that phone number, 615-737-1025. We will get into some of your phones, but also Adam Schefter is deciding on Twitter, apparently, who is and who's not going to get franchised. And there's an article out today at ESPN about all the Titans' cap space. And yet, I don't think that's the number that really matters. I'll explain to you the number that does. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company and your phone, 615-737-1025, 1025, 106 through the game. and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live at the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. So this is decision week in the NFL. And you're saying, what do you mean decision week? So if you look around the country, and I haven't seen all the national shows or anything like that, but a lot of people take this week off. In fact, this time last year, I took off from Wednesday to Sunday to go to Mexico because the football season's over, the Super Bowl's over, the reaction to the Super Bowl's over, and so the NBA All-Star Game kicks off what I kind of consider to be a dead week, unless you are just a diehard college hoops fan. It is kind of a, and there's like these bubble watch games. It is kind of a lull in the sports calendar. Now, we got a big hockey game tomorrow night we got to worry about. But, again, this is the week that a lot of people decide to take off. And the reason that a lot of people take off is because there's not a lot of football news that happens this week. Maybe later in the week we'll see teams that don't want players anymore that are under contract for next year. They'll start cutting those guys. I think Chicago's already started cutting those guys to begin with. But again, this is decision week. This is when the teams are sitting there having their meetings. The scouts are in town. The board is being put together. They are looking at the pro board, and they are comparing it to the draft board. And they are looking and trying to figure out, okay, when we go to the combine next week in Indianapolis, which agents do we need to have a conversation with, wink, to start thinking about trying to sign in free agency, because free agency opens up in 3 weeks. And so this is where a lot of this is going to get done. Titans need corners, for instance. Well, let's talk to Chidobe Awuzie's agent to see what, he's going to be looking for in free agency. And then after the combine, we can kind of form our plans as to what it might cost to sign him, or compare that to what Kendall Fuller's agent is telling you he's going to cost. And I've noticed Adam Schefter is on Twitter sitting there telling people Chris Jones is not likely to be tagged because of his cap number. Now, I don't believe Adam Schefter, because I don't believe that the cap number has anything to do with it, because, again, you can move the cap number however you want. And I saw an article at ESPN today that says the Titans have $65 million in cap space. And I know you guys talk about all the cap money all the time. Cap, cap, cap. And, again, when a guy's released, it's not about the cap. It's about the money. The reason why Chris Jones didn't sign an extension with Kansas City last year wasn't about the cap. It was about the money. And that's the same reason if they don't franchise tag him this year, it'll be because they don't want to pay all that money. I think they probably will franchise tag him, because I think he is a franchise player. But again, as you guys are completely infatuated with all this cap space and what it means, and I bet that article at ESPN, again, about the $65 million in cap space, I bet it's getting a ton of clicks, right? That's not really the number that matters. The number that matters is what Amy Adams Strunk allows you to spend. Again, the Titans started off the 2022 season, again, going for it, right? They were the number 1 seed in 2021, and they thought they were right there, and so going for it. 2022. The Titans' opening day payroll was $221.7 million, according to the NFLPA. Right now, the Titans are committed to $119.5 million, which is dead last in the NFL. So the difference between where they were 2 years ago and where they are as of right now for this year is $102 million. Plus, they're going to cut Andre Dillard. They're probably going to cut Luke Gifford. And that's going to take them to $110.5 million to spend. Is Amy going to let you spend all of that? Is Amy looking at the team this year and saying, hey, we want to be good right now. And if we're not good this year, you guys are going to be fired. So you guys, here's the money, go spend it. Or is Amy going to sit there and say, hey, this year, we're going to spend the $65 million, but we're not going to spend the $110 million. We're not going to spend, and again, that was what they were 2 years ago. The league's revenues have gone up. They didn't spend any money on their team last year for the most part. You could make the argument that Amy would say, go to $250 million. Because, again, like Cleveland is going to go to $300 million this year. As did Buffalo last year, Baltimore, whatever. That's the money that matters. And I will explain. Let's use Chris Jones as the example with Kansas City, right? Chris Jones is, according to Adam Schefter, not likely to be tagged. Now, I don't believe that, but again, fine. They don't tag him. Chris Jones is in free agency. If Amy's giving you $110 million to spend this year, why would you not spend $31 million on Chris Jones? And I can hear many of you right now say, Chris Jones? We've got Jeffrey Simmons, Jared. Right. But if you sign Chris Jones and you give him the $31 million in cash that Aaron Donald got on the first year of his new deal, and then you turn around and trade Jeffrey Simmons, what would you get in return? 2 first-round picks? Again, any team acquiring Simmons wouldn't have to pay out the signing bonus. That's already been paid. So an acquiring team for Simmons could say, hey, we're getting the 3rd or 4th best defensive tackle in the NFL at $17 million in cash this year, which is what Simmons is owed. So what would you get in return? Again, a player like Simmons' caliber. And I don't know what the precedent would be or isn't, but I think we start at 2 number 1 draft choices. So you sign Chris Jones, you trade Simmons, and you get 2 first-round draft choices, and I bet you one of those is going to be your left tackle. So now you've solved that. So you still have a dominant defensive lineman. I actually think Jones is better than Simmons, but it's debatable. You still have your dominant defensive lineman. You have the 2 picks that you received, and you still have $96 million in cash to spend because while you're paying $31 to Chris Jones, you're not paying $17 that's owed to Simmons. But if Amy doesn't give you all that money, then you are stuck trying to decide, okay, would Hollywood Brown at 1 year $14 million or 2 years $26 million be good enough to fill the wide receiver position? Or does Nick Holes, your new offensive coordinator, feel strongly enough about Calvin Ridley that he can keep his head on straight so we can try to get a discount with a 2-year, $30 million contract for Calvin Ridley, and then we draft a left tackle with the 7th pick, and so now Will Levis at least has a left tackle, but he's going to have, Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins instead of the possibility of Malik Neighbors or Roma Dunze at wide receiver to go with DeAndre Hopkins. You see what I'm saying? So forget about just the idea of the cap space. Forget about that. Even if you're a staunch believer in the cap and you think that thing's real and you think that teams make decisions off of it, which they don't, you also know that it is manageable, right? You also know that, we don't have enough cap space for this player, that you can redo a contract and that you can kick the can down the road and that you can do all of that. By the way, I think the Saints are like $80 million over the cap. Let's see if the Saints field a team next year. I bet they will. But again, that's not the number that matters. The number that matters is the amount of money that Amy is going to give Rand Carthon in order to spend. Because then you can get really creative. If she gives you $120 million, if she gives you $150 million, 150 would put your payroll at what? 119 minus whatever the hell that's 7. So 112 plus 150. Now you're talking about $270 million. You'd be up at the top of the league. You can do all kinds of crazy stuff with that. You can get all kinds of players with that because you can outbid everybody. So that's the number that matters. Forget about the cap space. That doesn't matter. The number is how much money is Amy willing to pay the players for your team, and how much money are the other owners not willing to pay. Again, Kansas City, Chris Jones, L'Jarius Sneed, both free agents. You going to pay them both top of the market money? Kansas City is notoriously cheap. You going to pay both guys top of the market money? Maybe not. But if you're willing to pay all the money, Now you see the difference. 615-737-1025. We will get to your phones next. 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in. Again, that's 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company, 1025, 106.3 The Game.
What you want to do in the offseason is you want to maximize every resource you have to put together the best roster you can get. And the only way you can do that is by knowing each of the draft and unrestricted free agency forwards, backwards, upside down. Because the decisions you make, just because you want a corner doesn't mean there's going to be a corner there in free agency or a corner there in the draft. Because you want another position doesn't mean they're going to be there. And you can't, I mean, you can, and people do, but you can't go out and waste a bunch of money on a corner that you're going to bring in that can't play. That's what kills you in the cap world.
That was Floyd talking about, hey, man, if you're going to get in there, what you can't do is you can't spend money on guys who suck, i.e., Andre Dillard last year. But the number that I keep telling you guys about, the number that matters is not the cap space number. It's the number of the amount of money the owner's going to let you spend. And I do have to disagree vehemently with something TD said on the show on Thursday. And I love TD. And I understand exactly what he's saying and what he means. But at this point, the Titans have so many holes that the Titans have got to scour free agency, and they have got to find starters, and they have to pay them. And when you pay somebody in the NFL who is a starting caliber player and you pay them on day one of free agency, you are overpaying them. This is what TD said on Thursday.
You don't just sign a guy just to sign him. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I'm talking about these high-end guys. Like Akella Weatherspoon is another one I mentioned. I don't know that you sign one of these high-end guys. I mean, Snead, you said, you know, he's probably not going to be available. You look at, you might just have to work on this draft, honestly, because there aren't really guys looking at this list. There's not really Kenny Moore, maybe. Yeah, I wouldn't be too aggressive to sign. I mentioned Steven Nelson. I wouldn't be too aggressive to sign any of these guys, to be honest with you. I like the Okudah option, though.
So I have to disagree, only because the Titans don't have enough picks to be able to draft through all the holes. I mean, I think the Titans have what? I've got it right here in front of me. The Titans have picks 7, 38, and 106. They have 2 picks in the top 100. So when it's like, well, what are they going to do at corner? First of all, they need 2 corners. Fulton's gone, Murphy Bunning's gone. And they both stink, so I don't want either of them back. So I need 2 corners. I need a left tackle. I need a center. I need a right guard. I probably need a right tackle. I don't think I can get the left tackle in free agency. So the only way to do that is to overpay. Again, the corner market. L'Jarius Sneed is out there. Chidobe Awuzie is out there from the Bengals. Kendall Fuller from Washington, they're out there. All those guys have warts. And if you pay, let's say you pay Chidobe Awuzie, he might not be a $13 million a year corner. He might not be that good. But again, that's what it's going to cost to get him. So if he's $13 million a year, and you're going to give him a signing bonus, so you give him more money up front. So you're giving him $13 million a year over 3 years. That probably means you're looking at $17 million in cash on the first year on Chidobe Awuzie. He's not going to be Darrelle Revis. And you have to know that. But you do have to sign a guy because you have that hole, and that hole has to be fixed. And so while it comes to him or Fuller or anything, I'm telling you, in free agency, you're going to spend a boatload of money, and you're not going to get a single superstar player. John Robinson's first year, and again, let's not forget trading. Trading is going to be an option. But in John Robinson's first year, the Titans signed a bunch of guys in free agency. For the most part, it worked, right? Richard Matthews, Ben Jones. The only star that the Titans acquired that offseason was DeMarco Murray, and that was because he was disgruntled with the Eagles. He didn't want to be there anymore. So when it comes to all this money and free agency and everything else, like, I agree. I want the good players. That's why I would try to sign Chris Jones, and then I would try to turn around and trade Jeffrey Simmons. But I'm not sure that's what the owner would be interested in doing. I'm not sure that's what a lot of you all would be doing. So if it's as simple as, hey, we're going to go out into free agency and we're going to sign players and use this money, and you need to sign starting players, guys that start in the NFL. There are tons of players who start in the NFL who are not superstars. That's how this league works. But what I'm not doing is I'm not taking flyers on a bunch of guys. The Chiefs can take flyers on guys because the Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes. You don't have Patrick Mahomes. So when it comes to corner, you can't take a guy that's not a starter in the NFL and say, well, we don't want to pay Chidobe Awuzie $13 million a year. We don't want to pay Kendall Fuller $15 million a year. We don't want to pay L'Jarius Sneed $20 million a year. So we decided to sign this guy for $4 million a year, but we think he can play. You do that, that's how you end up with Sean Murphy-Bunting. And guess what? According to Pro Football Focus, and their grades aren't everything, trust me, but according to Pro Football Focus, Sean Murphy-Bunting was the 200th rated corner. 200. That's not good enough. 615-737-1025. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. 615-737-1025. Somebody texted in and said, so much for getting to the phones. I'm getting there. We did have somebody text in to say that Chris Jones was tagged today. And I was like, Chris Jones was tagged? I didn't see that. And then it took me 5 seconds on Twitter to search. Chris Jones has not been tagged on Twitter today. But let me say this. If Chris Jones gets tagged by the Chiefs, I believe they will have to pay $120 million. 120% of whatever that franchise tag number is, because I think Jones has already been tagged before. But if they do tag Chris Jones, I am going to laugh my ass off, because Adam Schefter and these people in the media that know better about the salary cap, that have convinced all of you guys that it matters when it does not, and everybody who's in this, like the Schefters of the world, they know the cap's fake. But they know owners don't like that, so they, perpetuate the myth. Schefter tweeted out yesterday, due to his 2023 cap number, Chiefs defensive lineman Chris Jones on the franchise tag would be $32 million, making him an unlikely tag candidate. Let's see, Adam, because I don't think the Chiefs are going to let, this is me, I don't think the Chiefs are going to let Chris Jones go. One texter says, Jared, it's great show filler. I love people calling like the show, that's just filler to kill time. No. It's great show filler talking about a wide receiver or trading back, and it's entertaining getting the callers all riled up, but come on, there's no way after the past 2 seasons of the Titans fielding a Pop Warner League offensive line that the Titans can even consider passing on a top 10 graded offensive lineman. You continue to bring up Cincinnati, but look, they have a top 3 quarterback, and the Titans have an unproven second-year quarterback, and there's no comparison. How did it work out for the Colts when they neglected the offensive line when they had Andrew Luck? And what would Floyd think of you floating out the idea of taking a wide receiver over an offensive line if he saw what we have witnessed over the past 2 seasons? Well, let me start by addressing the Floyd thing. I don't answer questions like that because I don't know the answer. And I do remember the old man getting really mad at me one time saying, don't put words in my mouth. So this is like a long-standing thing unless it is something that is just basic, like trading for Julio Jones, who had massive injuries, especially hamstrings. He would have never been okay with that. Outside of that, I do not play the, Floyd would have said, because I have no idea. Now, the first part about the Cincinnati comparison. You can bitch about it all you want if you don't agree with it. But the coach told you what he thinks. Elite premium touchdown scorers over elite premium non-touchdown scorers. Now, if he thinks Joe Alt is elite and is premium and does not think that Rome Odunze is elite or premium, then it doesn't matter. Because, again, he'll take the elite guy who doesn't score touchdowns over the elite guy, over the non-elite guy that does. And I have no idea what he thinks about Rome Odunze. But you keep telling me, like, come on, Jared, those offensive lines were so bad. Why would you take a receiver? That doesn't mean that you can't go out into free agency and spend a buttload of money on that offensive line. I'll tell you right now, in a perfect world, again, without having to be crazy and creative and all kinds of things, which is what the Titans really need to do, is the Titans really need to start thinking outside of the box. But I don't think the Titans will. In a perfect world, if Peter Skoronski can move to left tackle, and we have no idea if he can or he can't, and they won't even tell us. if he can or he can't move to left tackle. But if he can, then it's easy. There's like 6 guards that are starters on the free agent market. Sign 2 of them. Sign Tyler Biotish, the center from Dallas. Skoronski's at left tackle. Sign Jonah Williams to play right tackle. You're done. You're done. Will you have an elite offensive line? Nope. Will you be able to protect the quarterback so that if you do have the next Jamar Chase, he'll be able to throw the ball to him? I think so. So it's not like I'm advocating that the Titans bring Aaron Brewer back. In fact, that's the thing that the Titans did last year. I went crazy about, and you all were like, oh, no, Jared, he'll be better when he moves to center. You'll see. You guys do that a lot, by the way. Oh, you'll see, Jared, you'll see. And then when none of us see, it's like, oh, yeah, no, that, nobody ever says, oh, yeah, you were right about all that. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. More of your phones on the draft. And we got a lot of free agency to get into as well. Stillman and Company, we continue on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. And I will say this. I was a little surprised. I was a little surprised by something that I saw in The Athletic today. We'll get to that next here. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Let's talk about Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Whoops. I do love my friends at Hiller, by the way. But let's talk about how great Hiller is. They were at my house last week, and I promise you, Hiller can do the exact same for you. And I know they can do a great job because I use Hiller at my home. So because it is love season, even though Valentine's Day has passed, this is still love season. So since it's love season, Hiller wants you to find your perfect match this month at Hiller. Get a free UV light when you purchase select new HVAC systems and get a free whole home surge protector when you buy a new whole home generator. Get 50% off of a descaler when you buy a new tankless water heater, and you'll never be more in love with your home. Find your perfect match at happyhiller.com. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. That's Hiller. Call the Happy Face Truck today.
even in a game where we got battered up front and Joe got sacked 9 times and probably hit 15 and, we really, outside of one drive and one explosive play, didn't really do much in that game. And we get a turnover late in the game, and now they're going to play two-man, and Jamar goes and wins versus two-man and wins the game. And so those moments have always stuck with me. When a push comes to shove, do you want to have someone that can go score touchdowns and go win versus tight coverage? And in that debate, the Sewell-Chase debate, which was, again, 2 players that you knew, whichever one we take is probably going to be a 10-time Pro Bowler, first-team All-Pro style player. And Panay was fantastic, and we loved him. And Jamar was fantastic, and we loved him. And the debate went back and forth, and which one do we need? And I landed on the Jamar Chase side because I saw what he could do for our offense. The difference there to me is like Jamar was an elite player. And in that moment for our team in Cincinnati, the elite player that can score touchdowns versus the elite player that can protect the quarterback with the style of quarterback that we had and the style of offense that we ran, we took the guy that could score touchdowns.
That was Brian Callahan. And again, the Chase Sewell debate, there's really not a wrong answer there. They're both great players, and they thought that, and they decided to go with Chase. And it's hard for me to argue with that decision when Cincinnati, in the 3 years since they made that choice, has won 1 AFC championship and was literally a shard of glass away. I mean, the line was so small between them and the Chiefs from going another year. Hard to argue that was a good decision. And so, or was a bad decision. It was very easy to argue that was a good decision. Hard to argue it was a bad decision. Now, again, Sewell, still a really good player. And they still need a right tackle over there in Cincinnati. One texter into the text line says, you're talking like Brian Callahan is making these picks instead of Rand Carthon. You think Rand Carthon's going to tell Brian Callahan no? And I mean especially with this thing. Right, it's one thing if Brian Callahan wants him to trade the 38th pick for T. Higgins because he loves T. Higgins and he wants to give T. Higgins $120 million, and Rand Carthon has evaluated the receiver market and thinks that there are going to be plenty of receivers at 38 that might be as good as T. Higgins and that it's not worth the investment, and just says, look, I just don't think we can do this. If Brian Callahan is convinced I want the elite touchdown scorer over the elite non-touchdown scorer, and Malik Neighbors is standing there on the board, and he wants him over Joe Alt. Again, Joel Klatt's mock draft has Neighbors and Alt on the board at 7. I don't think he's going to shut Brian Callahan down. That would not align with collaboration. We're all working together. We're all first big discussion. Nope, we're not doing it. I mean, I do think that, as I've said many times, I don't believe in Rand Carthon, and there's nothing you're going to tell me. You're not going to shame me into believing in Rand Carthon. The only thing that's going to change this is if I see the Titans go into free agency and start making some seriously competent moves. Especially if it's outside the box thinking, it's creative, and it makes sense. Again, John Robinson, instead of, let's see what we have in Bishop Sankey, which is what a lot of you guys want to do with Traylon Burks, John Robinson came in right away and immediately traded for DeMarco Murray, and they swapped spots in the 4th round in order to get him. It wasn't like they gave up a whole lot. The Titans start making moves like that, my opinion will change. But I keep thinking that the savior of this franchise is going to be its coach. That the coach is going to be the guy who ends up pushing them, again, when it comes to evaluating and it comes to deciding, that the coach and Anthony Robinson are the 2 guys in this that are going to really carry everybody else up the mountain. And that is only a hope. That is not an expectation. That is a hope. One texter says everyone is just assuming Alt will be there at 7, but it's not a guarantee. The only way that they don't take Fashanu the only way the Titans do take Fashanu is if the Titans rank him as a better player than Odunze and Neighbors, and I do not want to draft for need over drafting the better player. See, this is where, again, the Skoronski debate becomes a very important question. Bill Callahan has been a Titans coach now for 3 weeks. I'm sure he's watched every snap of every game that Peter Skoronski has played since he entered Northwestern. If he hasn't, then he's not doing his job. They need to decide, is Peter for sure a guard? If not, then they need to go forward with the idea that Peter Skoronski's their left tackle. And if they do that, then it makes the draft a lot easier. It makes that decision at 7 a lot easier, right? If Malik Neighbors is there, you take him. If you decide that Peter is not a left tackle, then you know that you absolutely have to get a left tackle. The only logical way the Titans can get a left tackle without having to sign somebody who's kind of a risk like Donovan Smith, or sign somebody who's really not that good, or take a risk on a second-round tackle when it looks like, again, Field Yates said at the Super Bowl on this show, that there's going to be tackles taken 8 or 9 in the first round and that probably 7 of them can play in the NFL at the beginning of the year. And some of those guys are right tackles only. If that's the case, then you almost have to draft your left tackle, because where else are you going to get it? Unless there's some, crazy trade out there that I haven't thought about, or that I don't know about, or I don't. Where do you find that guy? One texter says, Jared, if Joe Alt and Malik Neighbors are off the board at 7, but Rome Odunze is available, but he chooses not to run the 40 at the combine, how would you feel about drafting him? I remember you saying that Floyd would not draft a receiver if he did not run the 40, and we all know how Corey Davis turned out. So here's what would happen to me. And I don't know who's going to run and who's not. The old saying is, fast guys run fast, slow guys don't run. That's the old saying. Now, I don't know if these guys are going to run or not. Now, what Floyd said was he needed you to run a 40. You didn't have to run it at the combine. He preferred that you run it at the combine, but that you had to run it at a 40, and he had to time it. So at the combine, they've got, laser technology and sensors and things like that, and those are official times, and he can trust that. At a pro day, if you go to Clemson's pro day, Clemson is going to time it. Well, that's not going to work for him. If he's scouting your player, he wants to time it. Start, stop, and now I got the time. And I actually have his old stopwatch. But the point I'm making here is that if Rome Odunze decides not to run at the combine, or Malik Neighbors decides not to run at the combine, you better be flying your ass to their pro days, which you probably should be doing anyways, but you better. You fly to Baton Rouge and you work them out, and you have them run that 40. And if they won't do that, if Rome Odunze goes out of his way not to run the 40 at the combine, not to run the 40 at his pro day, not to run the 40 at an individual workout, I'm not drafting him. Because if you're that hell-bent on not running the 40, there's a reason for it. So to answer your question, how would I feel? That's exactly how I would feel about it. You're going to run that 40. No ifs, ands, or buts. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025 here on our program. There was an interesting nugget that I read in The Athletic today from a former general manager, and I also saw a former general manager's rankings of the top free agents that are out there. And there were a couple of shockers I had, including one about Derrick Henry. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. What do you think about the future with Derrick Henry and the Titans? And should they stay together? Should Derrick try to go somewhere else? What do you make of it?
Well, when I was with the Raiders in 2000, we led the National Football League in rushing. Bill wants to run the ball, and I think Brian does as well. And to have a back like that would be awesome. I think both sides have to get together and figure out a number that makes sense. I think Derrick is a guy that there's certain things he does really well. There's certain things that he's not as comfortable doing. I think certainly he's not going to do a lot for you in the passing game, but there's certainly a need for a back like that can move piles, that can wear defenses down over the course of 4 quarters. I think they'd love to have him, but it's got to make sense for both parties. And I think what he's going to find out is that running back market in free agency is not what it used to be.
That was Rich Gannon. And by the way, Derrick Henry is officially a free agent today, I believe, because his contract voided. That's what the void years are. His contract voided, and he's officially a free agent. Now, I was shocked. Rick Mueller's a longtime NFL general manager. I think he was with the Chargers. He was definitely with the Dolphins when Nick Saban was the coach. And he now writes at The Athletic. And I actually think he's pretty smart. Again, I don't know him. I actually think Corey does. But I don't know him. But I like reading his stuff. I think he knows what he's talking about. And he's got his free agency rankings that are out at The Athletic. Now, we went over the board, the Pro Football Focus board, as far as what they think. And it does not match up with what Rick Mueller thinks for the most part. For instance, John Runyon is ranked as the 92nd best free agent by Pro Football Focus, the guard from Green Bay. Meanwhile, he is 19th on Randy Mueller's board. So there are differences of opinion, but that's how it goes from team to team. But how about this one? Derrick Henry at 51 out of his top 100 free agents. Saquon Barkley is 5. Gus Edwards is 48. And I bring up Gus Edwards because how much money is Gus Edwards going to get in free agency when the Super Bowl champions have a 7th-round draft choice as their running back? How much money is Gus Edwards going to get in free agency in a market with Saquon Barkley and Tony Pollard and Zach Moss and Josh Jacobs and all those other running backs? I can't imagine Gus Edwards is going to get a lot of money. And Randy Mueller is telling you that if he was the general manager of the Ravens, he would just re-sign him as opposed to going after Derrick Henry because, again, he's got Gus Edwards ahead of Derrick Henry. Now, it only takes one of these 31 general managers to say Henry is the missing piece. But I do think this is somewhat of a representation of what Derrick Henry's market might look like. Same with guys like Austin Eckler. But at least with Austin Eckler, he can go to a team and say, hey, I've got a role in the passing game. Derrick can't do that. So I do wonder what this free agency experience is going to be like for Derrick and how humbling it may end up being for Derrick. A couple other things I was surprised about when I looked at his free agency rankings. At guard, and this is interior because he's, Lloyd Cushenberry is the center in Denver, and he is a guy that I certainly would have on the list if I were the Titans. But Lloyd Cushenberry, for instance, who, as far as Pro Football Focus is concerned, is the 57th best overall player and the 3rd best center, he ranks him as the 13th best free agent, period. He also ranks John Simpson very high. At guard from Baltimore, he ranks John Simpson at 28. Pro Football Focus craps all over John Simpson. Pro Football Focus says John Simpson is the 110th best player. And he likes Kevin Dotson, so does Pro Football Focus. But I was a little surprised he likes Lloyd Cushenberry as much as he does. And he's got Calvin Ridley. How about this one? Calvin Ridley at 23, ahead of T. Higgins at 34, and ahead of Mike Evans at 38. So if Randy Mueller ran the Titans, and we're talking about trading the 38th pick in the draft, in order to be able to give T. Higgins $120 million, he's saying that he'll just go sign Calvin Ridley. He thinks Calvin Ridley's better. Said that he didn't think Higgins was as explosive as expected. And again, ahead of Mike Evans, too. And you've got their passing game coordinator, by the way, as your new offensive coordinator. So when it comes to Ridley, and whether or not his head is screwed on straight, when it comes to Ridley, you should have a pretty good idea because, again, your offensive coordinator was around him all year in Jacksonville. Chris texts in and says, what would the franchise tag be for Derrick Henry? I do not believe the Titans can franchise Derrick Henry because, again, his contract voids. If they could franchise tag Derrick Henry, it wouldn't matter because they've already tagged him once, so they'd have to pay 120% of the tag. And I don't think Derrick Henry is worth $13 million, which is what 120% of the tag would be. So while I'd like to have Derrick Henry back, and I still think that Derrick Henry has value to the Titans, maybe more so than other teams, and I still think that leadership thing really matters for this team, given where they are in their development, I don't think he's worth $13 million. But, again, it only takes one of these general managers to decide that. One texter says, assuming that the Titans can get serviceable offensive linemen in free agency, how do we feel about a trade back? Maybe give up a later pick and number 7 to go later in the first round for a third rounder. And then maybe pick up Brock Bowers from Georgia, a supposed generational tight end that could essentially serve as a wide receiver. Think of Mahomes with Kelsey or Brady with Gronk, or, as I said at the Super Bowl, the 2 best tight ends were in that game, George Kittle and Travis Kelsey. I think tight end, I think there are 2 different sets of tight ends. There's a good tight end, which is Mark Andrews of the Ravens. He's good, but he'll never be as good as, say, a good receiver. And then there's Kelsey, Kittle, Gronk, Shannon Sharp. Now, I'm too young. I didn't watch Ozzie Newsome play, and I didn't watch Kellen Winslow Sr. play. So I can't put them in that class or whatever, and I'm not putting Tony Gonzalez in that class. Because, again, when the games mattered the most, I don't think Tony Gonzalez showed up. If Bowers is one of those guys where he's really like a receiver, then we've got a discussion. Here's the thing about the Titans, though. When it comes to trading back, this is what the pick chart says. The Jimmy Johnson trade chart. If you move down to 8, you're due the 100th pick in the draft, which is the end of the third round. If you move to 9, a third. 10, a third. 11, a high third. 12, a low second. 13 through 17, you're looking at a second-round pick. 18, you're looking at a first-round pick. But then the question is, how desperate is the team that wants to trade up? And then the other question is, what can you get on the back end? So if we're looking at this, let's say that you've got your tackles ranked, and you've got Joe Alt, and let's just give it a 7 out of 10 is the best you can be. Joe Alt is 6'8", and Olu Fashanu is 6'5". And one of the other tackles, Mims out of Georgia, is 6'5". And you've got on your board that you feel pretty certain that you can trade down to 12 and still get the left tackle and pick up, I don't even know who's picking 12th, but pick up their second rounder in this year's draft, add an extra second rounder, is the difference between 6'9" and 6'5".
Denver's 12.
Denver. Pick up their second rounder this year. Is the difference between that worth their second round pick? To where you can pick up Mims or you can pick up Fashanu or you can pick up one of these other guys? What I don't think you can do is I don't think you can trade down and target a specific player unless you're trading down to 8, right? You're at 7. Atlanta is desperate to get the left tackle. And I don't know if Atlanta is looking to – I have no idea what Atlanta's needs are. I have a pretty good idea. I know what one of their needs is, quarterback. Well, let's say Atlanta wants a player and they pick up the phone because they're afraid you're going to draft Joe Alt and they want Joe Alt. Well, you get a third-round pick for that. You could do that, then take Fashanu, and now you get the third-round pick. So then the question is, what's the difference between Alt and Fashanu? Is it worth the extra player that you would get in the third round? Steve has been waiting patiently and is up next on the program. Thank you for calling. What's up, Steve?
Hey, Jared, man, I want to call, give you your flowers, and I'm going to tell you, don't waver when they talk bad about you because you're very critical of what's going on with the Titans because I'm a fan, and I need it in my life. And until they get results, keep the pressure on them.
Thank you, Steve.
And I just want to give you your flowers now. Just keep it up, man. Don't stop.
Steve, I got to tell you something. We've been in this together long enough. You think that that's going to happen?
Nope.
See? That's why I love you. Appreciate your call, Steve.
All right, appreciate it.
Here's what I'll say about all of that, right? Like, I know people don't like me. I think there are more people that like me than don't like me, but I haven't been keeping track of it, and I don't even know if there's a way to do that. Here's what I know, though. I love the Titans. I love the Predators. And I love this city. And I want to win. I want my teams to win. I don't want to almost win. I want to win. I don't want to make excuses about why they didn't win. I want to win. And at the end of the day, all I'm telling you is what I think needs to happen in order for them to win. I think Jerry Stackhouse, for instance, has to go if Vanderbilt wants to win. That's what I think. Could be wrong, been wrong before. We're all wrong. Broken clock, right twice a day. I've been right. But that's not going to change. You guys know that. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. So, is Barry Trotz actually going to trade UC Soros? We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios here on the program. So is Barry Trotz going to trade UC Soros? Now, Barry will join us tomorrow at 5 o'clock, as he always does. Caught up with Barry a little bit on the road trip when I was with the team. It was always good to see him. And the more I think about it, the more I think about this. Do you remember during the old Jared and the GM program when I'd talk and almost wind up this whole long, constant line of questioning going through every single thing, and then I would say, what do you think, Floyd? And he'd say, I don't know. Do you remember that, Ian?
Sure.
So many times he'd be like, what do you think, Marcus, given this, and this, and then this happens, and then that happens, and then do you think the Titans know that Marcus is the future? I don't know. And people would text in, and they'd be like, have an opinion, Floyd. And my friends would text me, and they would be like, Floyd's texting in about how, or, they're texting me about Floyd needs to have an opinion. Floyd needs to say, Floyd needs to this, Floyd needs to. What I was too young to understand was sometimes the experts don't know, because there are things that are outside of their control that affect the end and the outcome. Right? I've talked about this with doctors. My friends are doctors. I remember I asked my one buddy over and over again, who was the chief resident in the ICU during COVID, and I was like, how much longer until this is over? I don't know. You're the doctor. You're supposed to know. That's not how this works. So this is a long-winded way of me telling you, I don't think Barry Trotz knows if he's going to trade UC Soros. When he says that he's waiting for somebody to blow his socks off, I think he actually means it. When he says that he can see UC Soros being a predator for life, I don't think he's lying. I think, again, the same thing he says on this program is exactly what he feels in his heart, which is if New Jersey or LA or if one of these teams goes freaking ham and offers me a package I can't refuse, yeah, I'll trade the goalie. But right now they haven't done that. And I'm not going to just trade the goalie to just trade the goalie. And so I'll give Barry credit, because the fact nobody knows even which way he's leaning tells me he's got a pretty strong hand in poker. It's one thing when you know you've got the winning hand. And I heard that New Jersey wants UC Soros bad. Again, we kind of joked around with Trotzy last week about New Jersey being in town and Tom Fitzgerald is former captain and he's running that ship. And yeah, they've been linked to Soros and the talk about Dawson Mercer and all that stuff. And Barry said last week, he goes, well, whenever the discussion turns to goaltending, I always tell him, here's my price. And we always laugh about it, but he needs a goaltender. I don't. I've heard that New Jersey wants Soros, and they want him bad. And I've heard that they're trying to land him bad. But what I don't know are what the players involved in the discussions, which I'm sure are being had. Again, Barry told us last week that they're having them. But what I don't know is I don't know the players that are being involved. Maybe he's already offered Dawson Mercer. I have no idea. Maybe he's already offered Seamus Casey. I have no idea. Maybe he's already offered their first-round pick this year and their first-round pick next year. And Dawson Mercer. I have no idea. Now, I have a hard time believing that he's already offered, Jack Hughes, for instance, in a package. Because if they offered Jack Hughes, then you bet your sweet tush that UC Soros would be a devil. They're not going to do that. But I use New Jersey as the example because they're an obvious trade partner, given the relationship and the needs of that team. They've got the forwards to be able to compete for a Stanley Cup. As of right now, they're not even in the playoffs. But they've got the forwards with Jack Hughes and Timo Meyer and Jasper Bratt and Nico Hischier. They've got the kind of team that they can look at and say, God, if we just had the goalie. And my guess is that is how they feel, and that's why they're trying hard to land UC Saros. Now put yourself in Barry's shoes. You know they want him. Clearly they have something you want that will knock your socks off, that will lead you to say, yes, I'll make the trade, or else you wouldn't even have the discussion. But you know that their offer is not good enough yet, which means you're left with one choice. And that's, when I say you, I'm talking about New Jersey. Raise the stakes or give up. By the way, I looked it up this morning. Their team save percentage is under 9 at .896 to be exact. If you're under 9 as a player, as a goaltender in the NHL, you suck. When you're under 9 as a team, you can probably argue the only reason New Jersey isn't in the playoffs right now is because their goaltending sucks so bad. So New Jersey's got all these good forwards. Paid a fortune last year for Timo Meyer. Their forwards are clicking. Jack Hughes is becoming that dude. And yet they're not even in the playoffs as of today. So you tell me who's in a better position from a negotiating standpoint. The Predators or New Jersey. The only thing that could help strengthen the Predators' hand is if there were more buyers in the market or contenders that needed goaltending that would then add to New Jersey's need for a goalie. Now, I don't know what other goalies are out there, but I can't imagine that any of the goalies out there are better than, Cam Talbot types. And that's not Saros. Saros is a star. So the only thing, again, that I look at when it comes to the Saros trade and Barry's position, which, again, has been publicly that if you knock my socks off, I'll make a trade. If you don't, I'll keep him. The only thing I care about is that Barry Trotz doesn't make a bad trade just for the sake of making a trade. That's what Rand Carthon did with Kevin Byard. That was a bad trade for the sake of making a trade. Now, a lot of you have convinced yourself that it was a good trade, but it wasn't. But again, that was a guy who was determined to trade that player. And so he did. And so I don't think Barry Trotz is in a position when it comes to the goalie of, well, I've got two goalies because I've got the kid who's lighting it up at Milwaukee, and eventually I'm going to have to go to him, and I've got Saros, and he's only got 2 years left, which means that his value should be higher right now than it would be for next year, because his value right now means that if I trade him, I can get 2 playoff runs out of him for him. And so the best offer I'm being offered right now is there's a couple of prospects, one of them I don't even like, and a pick, and fine, do it. That's the last thing I want. But I don't think Barry Trotz is going to do that. And so, to answer the question, is he going to trade him? I don't know. And I think he doesn't know. And I think he knows that he's the one guy who's got the goaltender. And so if LA is really serious about not going into the playoffs with David Rittich as their goalie, then they need to up the ante. If New Jersey is really serious of not trying to run through the Eastern Conference with a Scarbini in net, in spite of the fact that they've got good forwards, then they need to up the ante. What Barry doesn't have to do is Barry doesn't have to do anything he doesn't want to do. And again, that's negotiating from strength. So, do I think he's going to trade the goalie? Yeah, I do. And I have no inside information that leads me to that opinion. And when I say the certainty of trading the goalie, I would say 55% to 45%. But as far as the guy who's actually got his finger on the trigger, I don't even think he knows what's going to happen. So how would any of us know what's going to happen either? 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in on that, 615-737-1025. And there is one thing that has become inevitable to me, and I told Willie this when we were headed to the hotel on Friday night. I did tell Willie this because Willie's been talking about extending Saros and this long drawn out passing of the baton. And there is one thing that I do feel pretty certain about that we'll get to next, and your phones. 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company, 1025-1063 The Game.
I think players like the honesty. I try to be honest with them as where they sit with us. And Juice, I said, in my perfect world, you're here for the course of your career because you've been a special player, no question. But at the same time, you have to listen for the long term as well. If an asset comes that you just can't envision yourself getting, and our strength is goaltending, that you would have to consider that. And I told him that, and he truly believes that that I'm upfront with him on that, which I am, and. I just hope he plays good tonight so that we can, go on this playoff run here.
There you go. That was Barry Trotz last week. We'll have Barry on tomorrow at 5 o'clock. I don't think much has changed since our discussion with him last week. But there is one reality, though, when it comes to Saros and trading him, and this is kind of the one caveat. So I think Trotz is in a great position from a negotiating standpoint. Jersey wants him bad. Who knows about L.A., who's got David Rittich as their goalie? Somebody said to me last week, they said, is David Rittich really a starting goalie in the NHL? I said, it's kind of like when Dylan Radins plays right tackle for the Titans. Like, he's your starting right tackle, but he's not really a starting right tackle. David Rittich is not a starting goalie in the NHL, but he is their starting goalie. And so he's in a position of strength where, again, he's got a goalie. I mean, he's got a really, really good goalie. But here's the one kind of caveat, because he can wait, but he can't wait forever. Because at some point he'll have to trade one of the two goalies. Willie, and I love him, God bless him, Willie was talking last week about the idea of extending Saros and having this prolonged passing of the torch between Saros and Askarov. And I'm just going to tell you that's not going to happen.
You don't think it could be a similar situation to Rinne and Saros?
No, because they need offense. That's why. The money's going to be too much, and quite frankly, Askarov's ready. And Askarov was not drafted 11th overall to win games for the Milwaukee Admirals, which he is doing constantly right now. He's ready. He's 21 years old. Did he play today, Ian?
I don't know that.
Where they won again. I mean, their website, the Milwaukee Admirals website, I was trying to pull this up because they won again. And so I was trying to pull up the box score, but when I clicked box score, it took me to like this game story with all this text from the game that happened on Saturday. It's like, get your Fakakta website figured out so I can get this, I can figure out who's playing, who's not. Askarov was in there, gave up 3 goals, and made 17 saves. So not a great game, but again, he is now 26-1 at Milwaukee. Coming into today, he had a plus 920 save percentage, and he allows typically 2 goals a game. Again, he allowed 3 today, but typically I think it's like right at 2 goals a game is his GAA. He's ready. I actually looked it up yesterday, and I looked up Igor Shesterkin, for instance, because I do think, Ian, he's probably, not that he's having a great season right now, but he is probably the best goaltender in the NHL.
He's up there, yeah.
I mean, I think that, consistently, and again, Shesterkin.
And then the Vasilevsky in Tampa. He could still put him in there.
Vasilevsky's a pawpaw at this point, and I think overpaid probably a little bit. But I hear your point. And there was a little bit of a transition there with him and Bishop. But anywho, I looked up his AHL stats, Shesterkin's. He played 25 games when he was 24 years old. Askarov is 21. And again, Askarov has a plus 920 save percentage, and he allows 2 goals a game. Shesterkin had a 935 save percentage. So it was somewhat similar. And again, Shesterkin 17-4-5, Askarov 26-1. And he's 21 years old.
This is 13th straight win.
13 straight. He's ready. But they can keep him down this year. Like, they can say, hey, he's 21, he's not ready, we want him down there, and then keep him down in Milwaukee, and Milwaukee's absolutely going to make the playoffs, and so they'll absolutely have another playoff run, and that's more reps and more games and more shots and more everything for Askarov. They can do that for this year, but they can't do it forever. Like, he needs to be on the Predators next year. And I know at 22 years old, he won't be a finished product, but he's ready for the NHL. And so at some point, this is kind of the one spot where Barry isn't strong in terms of trading Saros, is that he is eventually going to have to move one of the goalies. And in reality, when it is one or the other, in sports, I don't care if it's football, baseball, basketball, hockey, usually 99% of the time, they choose the young guy over the old guy. I'm trying to think in my head. Robert Kraft made him choose Tom Brady over Jimmy Garoppolo, so that's going with the old guy over the young guy. But when it is kind of even and there is no sentiment involved, normally they choose the young guy over the old guy. And I do think, again, at this point, I think Askarov's ready. And as I said, they didn't draft him 11th overall to win games for the Milwaukee Admirals, even though he's winning a bunch of them. Phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Ian, I hate to do this, but I'm going to do it.
Okay.
So Kevin Morrison has tweeted in, and he says, day one of tweeting at Jared Stillman until he acknowledges the Milwaukee Admirals, their massive win streak, and the success they've had this season.
17 straight wins.
Well, Kevin, you're not going to have to get to day two, because it is worth noting that the Milwaukee Admirals are absolutely kicking ass. Now,
let's see, it's the second longest winning streak in AHL history.
Now, do I care about the standings for Milwaukee and the possible playoff opponents, and if Milwaukee can win the Calder Trophy or Cup, or I don't even know the difference between the Rookie of the Year and the AHL Trophy Award, and I don't care. Do I care about any of that? No, I do not. Here's what I care about, though, which is how much of this is about the young guys that are going to make a difference on the Predators, and how much of this are about the guys that we've already seen that probably won't be superstars. And this is what makes me nervous. Now, Askarov is absolutely in the category of young guy as a prospect who should be a superstar, who it looks like is developing into one, and so his success matters to me. But, Ian, did you tell me Juuso Parssinen scored twice today?
He did, yeah.
Okay. Parssinen scored twice today. Tomasino scored twice on Saturday. Liam Foudy scored today. Well, these are the guys we've already seen, right? Like, if they're going to win 17 in a row, I want Joakim Kimmel and Zachary LaRue and Fedor Shvetskov. I want those guys to be doing the ones that are the guys that are doing the scoring, because those are the guys who I haven't seen yet, who I'm hoping can be this, especially in Kimmel's case, can be kind of the star players to join Forsberg and O'Reilly and Yossi and that group going forward. So what does make me nervous is that I'm afraid that the Predators have a bunch of what's considered by baseball terms to be quad A, where you're dominating AAA, but you can't hack it in the majors. I am so worried that that's why the Milwaukee Admirals are so good, is because guys like Tomasino and Parssinen are out there scoring every night. Like, we know Liam Foudy cannot play on the Predators and make a difference. We know that. Like, can he be on the team and be better than Gurianov? Yeah. But Gurianov was down there lighting it up, and he's terrible. So that, again, I am not dumping on the Admirals. Because, again, 17 in a row is 17 in a row. And if you're going to tell me that you're rebuilding, at least I can see, hey, some of the rebuilding going on looks pretty good, especially the goalie. But it does make me nervous that when I looked at the stats for the Admirals, I saw all of these, like the leading scorers are all, Mark Jankowski and
Gurianov is up there. Afanasiev having some good numbers.
And he's not, he's not going to be a first-line player in the NHL.
Probably not first line, no.
So, like, Kimmel's the guy. And Kimmel's not the one who's leading this team to 17 straight victories. That's the only concern I have. And I'm not dumping on it and anything else, but it's like I look at the Predators defensively, and they've got Delgado and Spencer Stasny and Livingstone and all those guys that are down there at Milwaukee. And again, are those guys quad A players? Is Jake Livingstone a top 2 pair defenseman in the NHL?
I haven't been paying super close attention, but I do feel like there's been certain players throughout the streak that have stepped up. It's not just all Jankowski carrying the team. There's different players who have stepped up in different positions and have made some plays along the way. Whether it's Foodie had a really good game. I think he had a hat trick a week or two ago.
I know, but Foodie's not going to contribute to the Predators.
Yeah. Well, they're helping.
That's the problem.
Yeah, that's true, but they're helping to contribute to wins now. So in Milwaukee, I don't know what that will translate to the Preds.
That's the stuff I don't care about.
Yeah.
That's what I'm telling you. When you go to the Sounds, and I think the Brewers have the second highest prospect in all of baseball. And I think he's going to be on the Sounds this year, at least at the beginning of the year, because, they manipulate the service time and then they call the guy up. If I was a Brewers fan, and I'm not, but if I was, and I'm watching the Sounds, you've been to the Sounds, you know how it is where they have half the guys you've never heard of. Unless you're an avid baseball prospect fan, you haven't heard of half of these guys. And then the other half are all guys that were in the majors before, who when they announce them during a game, you're like, oh, crap, I forgot about that guy. He used to be pretty good. He had a nice little run there when he was with that team, right? I remember when John Rocker pitched against the Sounds. It was like, oh, hey, it's John Rocker. And then, there's some rehab guys, so then it's kind of cool, when Christian Yelich plays in the Sounds. But the point is that if I was a Brewers fan and the Sounds won 15 games in a row, and the guys that were hitting all the home runs and, pitching well and everything else were all guys that couldn't hack it in the majors, then as a Brewers fan, I wouldn't be totally excited, because we want the guys up with the Brewers that are going to be hitting third for us and our number one pitcher, and that's what we want. And that's, again, the only concerning part I have about this Admirals run is that every game it's Parsonen and Tomasino and Foodie and Goryanov and Jankowski. And, again, I've seen those guys play. I like Mark Jankowski. I actually thought he played pretty well the other night at St. Louis. But he's not going to be a first-line player in the NHL. And that's what you need. Whereas, Tanner Molendyk, who is still a junior, he is supposed to be a top-pair defenseman. By the way, did you see the goal Molendyk had the other night, Ian?
I did not know.
Oh, my God. He had a game winner where he freaking ripped it. Yeah, Molendyk, he might be the real deal. Those are the guys I'm talking about. Those are the guys that are going to get you out of the purgatory and back to the top of the league. So I'm not dumping on the Admirals. I'm just saying, I am taking some of this with a grain of salt, other than the fact that I think the goalie is ready. 615-737-1025. That's your phone number, 615-737-1025. We'll get to that. Plus, Elliot Friedman reported that the Predators made a very controversial decision. And he says that they made it for you. We'll get to that next, and your phone. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
One thing that really stood out to me was someone called me and said, you talked about the players, how they'd feel and why the team felt they did. And Barry Trotz, when I spoke to him, he was careful to say we don't have bad culture. But he said our standards had slipped below expectation. And he says when you have young players especially, you have to send them a message that you can't be rewarded if your standards and your preparation slips below your principles. And he said to me, particularly at home, and someone called me and he said, that's the part of the story you have to grab onto. He said, this is not about the Predators and their players. This is about the Predators and their fans. And he makes a great point. What is happening here is the Predators are going through a rebuild or a retool or whatever it is, and you are asking your fans to buy into that. You are asking your fans to believe in what you are trying to build. And what's Gord Stellick's famous line, Jeff? If you're going to stink, stink on the road. And what Barry Trotz, he said what Barry Trotz is telling the fans, and not only his players, is we will not tolerate those efforts in front of our fans paying their money to see us play.
That was Elliot Friedman on his podcast, Hockey Night in Canada, the 32 Thoughts podcast. And Elliot was the one that reported on Saturday that the Predators were scheduled originally to fly from St. Louis on Saturday night to Las Vegas, where they'd have Saturday night in Vegas, and then they'd have, whatever was left of Saturday night, which it's Vegas, so there was plenty left of Saturday night. They'd land in Vegas Saturday night, Sunday, all day and night in Vegas, where I think they were supposed to go to U2. And today, they'd have all day, and again, tonight you got to go to bed because you're playing tomorrow. But basically, that was when Andrew Burnett said the guys needed to focus on hockey and not on vacations. That's what Andrew Burnett was talking about. And they were going to go to the U2 concert and everything else. And then that didn't happen. Now, I traveled with the Predators this week, and the way I approached it was from the second that I got off the air on Friday at 11 o'clock, I treated myself as I'm not going to say like a member of the team, but again, like team first over the whole, you know what I mean by that, right, Ian?
Sure.
I didn't look at myself, I'm not going to sit there and try to gossip about, this happened, that, you know what I mean. And then when I landed, I'm back to show host, and doing this. So I knew about the Vegas trip because, of course, that's what a lot of people were talking about the idea that the team was supposed to go to Vegas. Instead, they're going home to Nashville. And I got to tell you, as a fan who paid money to go to the game Thursday night, I loved it. I loved it. And I was talking with some people. I was like, I think if the fans ever find out about this, the idea that Barry Trotz said, no, you guys played like crap on Tuesday at home and you played like crap on Thursday, and so we're not going to Vegas, we're not partying out there, we're not going to U2, we're going home, we're getting on the ice, we're going to practice, we're going to get ready for Vegas, and we're going to take it seriously. I said, I think the fans would love it. I think the fans would absolutely love it. Let me tell you this. Again, we live in a world now where everything gets out one way or another. I don't think the Predators I don't think, again, that it's a big deal that it did get out, but I don't think the Predators necessarily ran to Elliot Friedman to tell Elliot Friedman that they punished the players for playing poorly, right? I think this might have been an agent, and these agents are always trying to curry favor with the insiders. This might have been an agent whose player told him, yeah, we're not getting to go to Vegas early, so I got to this, that or the other. And the agent told Elliot, and then Elliot called Barry. That's the vibe I get. So when Elliot says that this decision was about the fans, and that it's like if that the team is going to stink at home is unacceptable, and Barry did this for the fans, I don't totally think that's the case. But as a fan, I do appreciate it. As a fan who, again, paid money to go to the game Thursday night, I had my head in my hands. I couldn't believe it in the first period, I don't even think we went back to the seats. And we left maybe with about 5 or 6 minutes left, because I went to the game with a buddy that I went to high school with, and we were just hanging out and catching up and things like that. And I don't think we went back to the seats after the first period because it was so bad. And so I think it's great. I think it's awesome. And that's just me as a fan. I love the fact that Barry Trotz is telling these players that, stinking it up and then being rewarded for it, that's not going to fly. But I also think the idea that this is about the fans, that Elliott's saying, I'm not sure I believe that. I think it is Barry and Andrew Burnett want things done a certain way, and they didn't do them a certain way, and so they are going to punish the team for that, which I think is a good idea. But I don't think it was for the fans to know this, because I don't think the Predators wanted the fans knowing. I could be wrong. But I was the one who was thinking to myself, I'm like, man, if the fans find out about this, the fans are going to freaking love it. And maybe I oversold that. Now, some of you guys were texting in earlier today about how you wanted this, how you loved it. You guys were texting in about that. So maybe you did love it, but I maybe think that I loved it a little bit more than you guys did. Phone lines driven by Wilson County Hyundai.com, 615-737-1025. You guys on the text line. One texter says, Brad says, I predict that Askarov will be the Preds' backup goalie next year. He isn't a proven NHL starter, so Barry would be foolish to assume that he is, and it would be premature to trade Saros right now. Well, here's the deal, Brad. Not everybody can have everything the way they want it when they want it. There is no trade, I believe, that is a perfect slam dunk. Yes, make the trade. There are no ramifications on the other side of it. But the reality of where the Predators sit right now in this rebuild is they need offense. They need top 6 forwards. Now, they will be able to buy a top 6 forward at some point. And I have not looked up what unrestricted free agency is going to be next year, but the Predators will be armed with cap space like they have right now in a league where the cap is real. They will be armed with cap space. And I think, again, all of these prospects, all of these picks, it gives them a talent pool with which to deal. And I think there's going to be at some point a player who is disgruntled or a player who it just tells his team, I'm not re-signing here. Or a guy that's got 1 year left on his deal and he's a good player, but his team knows they're not going to compete. So they decide, all right, fine, this is what it is. Move us on. We're not going to be able to work out a deal. And then you'll be able to trade for that guy. So I think you'll be able to buy one of your top 6 options. I do hope, in spite of the fact that they're not being led necessarily by these young guys with their 17 wins, that they're not scoring all the goals. I do hope that Kimmel or Svechkov or one of these guys can fill another one of these top 6 roles. I hope that one of the guys that's in the mix right now, these young guys from this year, Parsonen, Tomasino, Glass, Evangelista, I hope one of them might eventually develop into being a top 6 forward. I'm not sold that that's going to happen, but maybe. But as far as Askarov should be the backup next year, Saros should be the starter, I just think that they've got to they got to trade one of the 2 goalies. At some point, they have to trade one of the 2. If you want to say that they'll wait until next year and then next year at the deadline they'll do it, you're not going to get as big of a return. But I do think at some point they're going to trade one of these 2 goalies before UC Saros becomes an unrestricted free agent. And I don't think they're going to extend Saros. One texter says, I think some Preds fans think that Askarov is going to come up like Saros did with Pekka Rinne behind him, but Pekka Rinne was on his way to retirement, so you couldn't trade him for assets. Not only was Pekka Rinne on his way to retirement, Pekka Rinne also had a no-movement clause, and Pekka Rinne was competing for the cup. So it wasn't like you were looking at this saying, man, we need more offense right now. We need to rebuild this team. We need to trade Pekka. No, it was, we got to the cup final because of Pekka. We won the President's Trophy because of Pekka. And so we're still competing for a championship because of Pekka, who we can't trade anyways because he's got a no-movement clause and he's old. This is not an apples-to-apples scenario. Maddie says, I take the kids to one game a year. That Stars game on Thursday was the one game we went to. They should offer something to those that had tickets to the toilet bowl of a game. At least we made memories. We were actually hoping for one more Stars goal so we could see a double-digit hockey game. Well, they're not going to give people their money back, and they shouldn't give people their money back. But I do think there's an understanding that if they want, the fans to support the team, then the team needs to play their butts off. And they may play their butts off and lose. But all they're asking for is for the players to play their butts off. And they don't think they did. I'm sorry that was the one game you went to, Maddie. That's a tough one. Also, I have a hot take that I have a hot Predators take that I'm going to drop on tomorrow's show. And it's going to drive people crazy. I can guarantee you that. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Stillman and Company. Let's talk about Window Nation. That's right. I love Window Nation. In fact, when we were on the bus going back to the airport to fly from St. Louis back home, I saw a Window Nation building out there in St. Louis. And I'm like, those are my guys at Window Nation, online at windownation.com. Here's the thing, though, about how national Window Nation is. This is not a franchisee thing, right? So this is not, I'd like to open a Window Nation in Nashville, so let me just go ahead and buy, a Window Nation and put down. And then if I go out of business, your warranty, your lifetime warranty on your windows goes away. No. This is a big-time national company that has been in existence for forever and will continue to operate, so your lifetime warranty will stick with you, period, no discussion. That's one of the many reasons to love Window Nation. Another reason to love Window Nation is because your energy bills might be going up, especially as we go literally within the last week from 28 degrees and 19 degrees to 60 degrees to 30 degrees to 70 degrees. I mean, that can really have an effect on your windows, and then that can have an effect on your energy bill. So if you've got those rising energy costs, get the energy efficient windows. It'll save you a fortune with my friends at Window Nation. And not only that, save big with 50% off all window styles and zero down, zero interest, and no payments for 24 months. That's right. Again, 50% off all window styles, zero down, zero interest, no payments for 24 months. Call 866-90NATION or visit windownation.com today. Again, that's 866-90NATION, windownation.com.
Tennessee led 51-20 at halftime. It's been pretty close in the second half, 37-33 in favor of the Volunteers, but the game was out of hand by the intermission. Here's Keefe to a posting Lang. Has his man behind him. Makes his way in toward the paint, trying to shoot a fadeaway off the front rim. No good. Tennessee got the rebound, and they can run out the clock. As Hurst hands it off to DeLeon, he arrives front court. And the big crowd at Thompson Bowling Arena salutes their team on their way to a 19th win. They go to 19-6 and 9-3 in SEC play. Vanderbilt 7-18, 2-10. Rick Barnes and Jerry Stackhouse, North Carolina Hall of Famers, exchange handshakes. Tennessee 88, the Commodores 53.
Basically, the game, our key guys, Ben, Tyron, as they're in the game and they're minus 34, minus 35, minus 31. We ain't got a chance in hell, and we didn't have that tonight.
Jerry Stackhouse after that performance on Saturday, and I got to give credit. I got to give real credit to Kevin Ingram at the beginning of that call. Man, he tried to put some lipstick on that right there, saying, hey, Tennessee's only won the second half 37-33. That's it. I mean, they were down by 31 at halftime, but in the second half, they only lost by 4. Can't be mad about that, right? So I don't know what's upcoming on the Commodore Hour tonight. I don't know. It's usually hosted by Kevin, right?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. Kevin does a great job. Kevin has been a great broadcaster in this town for 25 years. I don't know what to say about Vandy basketball. I feel like Saturday's game should have been the final nail in the coffin of Jerry Stackhouse's tenure. Because, quite frankly, I just don't know how you accept what is reality with Vandy basketball, which is, A, this team is terrible, and this team is getting embarrassed both at home and on the road. The crowd, it is a ghost town right now at Memorial Gym. Let me say this. I grew up a Vanderbilt fan. I want Vandy to be good. I wouldn't consider myself like a Vandy fan now, but I do root for Vandy. Like, I hope things go well for Vandy. I don't live and die by it one way or another. But I do like going to a couple of games a year because at Memorial Gym, it's normally high-end college basketball. And when there's a good team that's coming in town, you'll get a good crowd. And, again, this is like the Predators not playing hard in front of the fans last week at home and Barry Trotz being mad about it. I mean, when there is something to cheer for, Vanderbilt fans will do that. And that gym is a fun place to be. And 5 years with no NCAA tournament, I mean, we're not asking for much more. But again, as Gentry Estes wrote at the Tennessean earlier this month, at the very beginning of the month, before the Kentucky embarrassment, before the Tennessee embarrassment, he said that he doesn't believe that Candace Lee wanted to move on from Jerry Stackhouse at that point. So I think this is the end of the road, but I don't know. And it will be fascinating to see what they say on the Commodore Hour, which is coming up next again with the great Kevin Ingram. And baseball took the series this week against Florida Atlantic, so at least there's that. Stillman and Company, we'll see everybody tomorrow at 2 o'clock.